Go ahead and get the work session started this evening. Tonight we'll be hearing from our mobility and public spaces team. And so I'll go ahead and hand it off to Tessa Grieger and Karen Gallagher.
All right. Good evening, Chair Danley, Commissioners. My name is Tessa Grieger, and I manage the Mobility and Public Spaces program. So we're excited tonight to be before you to provide an overview of transportation planning and the city of Boise and how we approach that work. Karen Gallagher. Sorry, are you okay? Okay. All right. So Karen Gallagher is going to be providing the bulk of the presentation tonight, but I wanted to take a few minutes just to kick things off and provide a high-level introduction to Mobility and Public Spaces, the team and the program. So Mobility and Public Spaces is a new program area for the city of Boise within our Planning and Development Services division. So before you on this slide is a high-level org chart for Planning and Development Services, and you can see where Mobility and Public Spaces lies within that. So we are one of 5 program areas within the Planning Division alongside Development Services, Planning and Zoning, City Design, and Design Review and Historic Preservation. So within Mobility and Public Spaces, we have 3 people currently. So myself, I started with the city in December, so I'm still pretty new here, but then also Karen Gallagher, who, like I said, will be giving the presentation tonight, as well as Dane Hoskins. So Dane just joined the city a little over 2 weeks ago. So Dane is our new Pathways Program Manager, which we're super excited to have him. Karen has been with the city for 24 years, and sadly for us, but exciting for her, she's retiring in a couple of weeks. So our team is in flux, but nevertheless, this is the strong and mighty growing team before you today. And I'm excited to move forward with really developing the Mobility and Public Spaces program as we look ahead. So just a lot of words on this slide here, but one thing I wanted to mention, we are working with a consultant right now, Parametrics, to work with our team, to work with the planning department to really develop the charter, the vision, the objectives for the Mobility and Public Spaces, being that it is a new program area for planning. So this is high level, really what we're striving to achieve moving forward. But like I said, as we work with Parametrics and our teams, will be refining this and really developing the plan for the next several years to understand how do we as a team within the city really advance our mobility and transportation goals, as well as our goals around public space and really creating public spaces that are inviting, active, and connected to people and to our community. So excited to be moving that work forward. We would be happy to come back to the commission with more information as we have that built out, so you have a better understanding of where we're going several years down the road as we look at the Mobility and Public Spaces team. So today, just to talk high level about our primary responsibilities as a team. So we are largely focused on transportation planning, and Karen will speak to this today, but this includes coordinating with our partner agencies as you all are very well aware of, ACHD, VRT, CCDC, Compass, to advance our mobility and transportation projects and priorities, conducting development review, supporting transportation plans, so the Transportation Action Plan or other transportation plans as they come up, and then some involvement with different projects such as the 8th Street, where we have some ownership. Pathway projects are newer to our team, but this is something that we are really excited to be expanding on, especially as we have a new Pathways Program Manager with us currently. So we have a couple priority projects that we have funding for. This includes the Garden and Cascia Pathway project, as well as Broadway and Federal Way. So those are 2 that we're advancing currently, but we also have a whole Pathways master plan that we're working to develop and implement moving forward. And then mobility programs. So one of the projects that we're working on right now, we have a council work session planned for tomorrow to provide an update on our shared micromobility program. So this is going to a one vendor approach. So we are working to develop a contract with Lime, and this will really allow us to provide a more comprehensive shared micromobility program for the city of Boise. So excited to see that moving forward, looking to launch that revamped program in July. And then Vision Zero and safe systems. So providing support to the work that the city's doing, as well as our partner agencies to advance Vision Zero and reduce serious injuries and fatalities in our community. So those are a few just primary responsibilities today. But moving forward, as I mentioned, we're working with a consultant to really develop and build out what is the program structure, what's the charter for this team. And the way that we're looking at this is having programs that are really focused in these 4 areas that are listed on the slide here before you. So having projects that are identified and that we're supporting moving forward under the mobility network pathways program. So not just delivering on key projects, but really developing and advancing a program around pathways, mobility options. So having different programs and initiatives that support people with their transportation options. So whether that's education or encouragement or supporting different enforcement programs. And then one of the big opportunity areas working with our partner departments as well as our partner agencies is public spaces. So that's one that we're really looking to further refine to determine what is the best role for mobility and public spaces to play in terms of activating and really creating these inclusive and welcoming public spaces in our community. So with that, I will hand it over to Karen, who's going to provide an overview on transportation planning.
Thank you, Tessa. Thank you, Chair and Commission. So in 2016, the city embarked on a transportation plan, and it's built on the premise that no city has ever built its way out of congestion. So therefore, we're really looking at other ways of moving people. And not only is it a vision, it is an action plan. So out of all the choices we had, we identified 6 moves or tools that the city could work on when recognizing that we don't own our roads. So we're looking at safety, we're looking at walking and biking to the store, the bike network, active routes to school, the ability to park once in areas such as downtown and then move around to your destinations, as well as transit. And specifically 3 routes on transit with the limited dollars that we have. So breaking down the transportation action plan, kind of a simplified way to look at it is when we look at the average home, it generates on average 10 one-way car trips per home. And that's, from if you have 2 people that work, that's 4 round trips. And if you take a trip to a soccer game or to the bank or to whatever that is, all of those add up. And if you've got teenagers, you have more. And if you have a single person, senior, you're going to have less. But on average, it's 10. And so we were looking at, even if we could reduce that by 10%, 1 vehicle trip or 2 round trip, how can we do that? And that was looking at giving people options and choices that were better and convenient and safe and attractive to them. So looking at those multimodal strategies, how can we accomplish that? And so infrastructure and investment happens in 2 different processes. So one is development review, which you play a huge role in, and the other is through public investment. Either way, these dollars that build infrastructure, they're in place for 50, 75, 100 years, depending on what it is. So those decisions just last and create this environment that can make it easier or less attractive for someone to make a mode choice. So as you know, you've got subdivisions, conditional uses, plan unit developments, everything that comes across you and everything that goes to the other decision makers as well at design review and staff level. And then on the public side, of course, we've got the Ada County Highway District that is building through their 5-year work plan. We've got the city investing in pathways, Valley Regional Transit, of course, CCDC's building infrastructure, as well as money that comes through Compass to various agencies. And to accomplish that, we do have checklists. Checklists before things come to across for your decisions, and then checklists as we're looking at ACHD or VRT or whoever investing as well. And we're looking at all the modes and looking at ways, even with the new zoning code, of how those can be highlighted to make it obvious what the pedestrian environment is, just in one sheet at a time to look at those. So I think we've got some advances that are going to make that easier to look at. Looking at the modes one by one, transit is one of the best ways that we can move people. It's efficient and it just has a reach of from, less than a mile, or, if you people walking about a mile, everything beyond the mile up to, 23 miles can get you to Caldwell. That walking and biking won't get you everywhere, but transit really is our ace in moving people more efficiently. So to do that, we need land uses along those routes that support that, which again is a direct connect with the business that takes place here with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then just briefly wanted to, higher frequencies equates to more riders. And there's a conversation tomorrow night at City Council with our annual public hearing before City Council to talk about the level of funding and more information. If you're interested in that, feel free to tune in. Then looking at ACHD, we have them involved in two levels on the bicycle network. So one is the low stress bike network. And I've highlighted just a generic 4-mile section here on the slide. And what you see in the center are the blue lines are these low stress connections. So this involves a lot more sharrows, but then enhanced crossings so that people can get across the arterials, wayfinding, and it's just a great way that ACHD is advancing multiple miles to get people across all sections of the city. They've done neighborhood plans on each of everything but the airport planning area to come up with networks, and they are definitely making progress on the low stress bike network. The other one is on the arterials, which is just a little more nuanced, and I did want to just touch base with you on this. Like in this example, the mile arterials are shown here mostly in green, and a lot of those ACHD does have plans to improve the bike network, and they've switched from the 5-foot bike path, bike lane on the street to the multi-use path that has at least a 4-foot buffer on it. So we're seeing a lot of that in the Southwest. We're seeing that when ACHD, through their investment in their capital program, is doing at least a mile at a time. That hasn't yet translated to a policy when a subdivision goes through or a development goes through. So we've got a little bit of a disconnect there, and through the city's pathway planning, sometimes we're trying to catch that, but we're supportive of ACHD getting that policy completed so that if it comes through the development process or if it comes through ACHD's capital, we're getting the same result. But you'll see a little difference in that right now, still in that interim. Of course, the other one is Tessa was touching base on is that we've got the whole pathway network throughout the city, citywide. And as we know, people highly desire an off-street network to walk or bike. And of course, this does connect to transit as well. So the last mode is walking, and just wanted to talk about a few highlights on that, a high quality pedestrian environment really helps to support walking, an interesting walk, active building facades, no blank walls. This is always a challenge with parking garages. Then of course, shade created by street trees. The trees also add interest. They also help with traffic calming. They get us a big bang for our buck. And then of course, there's all the environmental ones too. So trees, of course, are great in that buffer that gets created between the moving traffic and pedestrians, either walking or if it's a multi-use path, the bicycling. Of course, we mentioned the enhanced crossings to get across arterials to break down those barriers is also really helpful for walking, that you don't have to walk, pardon me, a half mile or more out of your direction to get a safe crossing. That we have worked with ACHD, at least on the arterials, to try to get enhanced crossings at the quarter mile. So that's 3 in between your major intersections. And then the last thing, if you remember nothing else that I talked about, it would be detached sidewalks, detached sidewalks, detached sidewalks. That's one of the main decisions that gets made, or that a lot of times that the developer has either, maybe some would rather take a different approach than the condition that staff has recommended. And like I said, that infrastructure is in place for easily, 50 to 100 years, and it really makes a huge difference. So with that, we're at the end for questions. And if you have any other topics that you're interested in us coming back for a deeper dive, we're interested in your feedback. Yeah, well, I still use the, pardon me.
Well, thank you, Karen. And I wish there was a bigger audience to just convey to you the following, which is thank you so much for your service to this city. I know when I started a couple of years ago, man, I can't believe it's been that long, but working together on many, many corridor projects and sub-area plans and all of those types of things back in those fun days. And I just think, I just know all of us appreciate those thankless moments and countless hours that you spent, doing everything that you can on behalf of the city and the residents of this city to make the transportation realm a better one. So thank you for your service and enjoy retirement.
Thank you, Chair.
Now, any hard questions for her before she goes?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
I would like to chime in as well. The city, it won't be the same, Karen. I just can't believe it. And I think our place is up on Cassia Street, but if you guys have not been up there, you should come. Now that you're retiring, you can come sit on the front porch that we just built and see what you've done to Cassia Street, because it's spectacular. It really is. It is like the e-bike superhighway. It is the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life, because we have, Bora down the one side, and then you go all the way down Cassia Street, of course, into the park. And it is the most fun thing to watch these families with those big cargo bikes, and they got their kids on the back and radios. And it is just the coolest thing in the world. And when that Garden Street piece goes through the park, I think it's just going to be spectacular. I know so many people are waiting for it. But yeah, it's just great work, and it's super, super exciting to see. And I hope what they did on the other side of Cassia actually moves our way too. So it'll, and what they're doing on Kootenai with the bulb outs and that kind of thing, that would be really cool. We still have a lot of speeding on Cassia Street, and it really is starting to be used in more of a multimodal fashion up there. So yeah, it's just super great work. And oh my God, it will be just a different place without you here.
Thank you.
Questions down this way? Well, come on. All right, I have a couple, you might imagine. Karen, I want to ask you a question. One of the questions I didn't get a chance to ask during our discussion on the code rewrite, there's a very specific citation in there saying that the city supports NACTO. Yes, that's a great thing. But as ACHD, because NACTO, as you know, and ASHTO are not the same thing. And I think you would agree that NACTO is much more in line with their guidances in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and maybe not as much as ACHD, but maybe I'm wrong on that. So I'd love your take on, we're going this way, are they going that way, and are we going to be aligned?
Oh, Mr. Chair, a really good question. We definitely desire to adopt some standards so that, every once in a while we get into a situation where we would like to point to a standard, and other than ACHDs, that more fully align with the city's transportation goals. So NACTO was one possibility to achieve that. It's still kind of interesting since we don't control our streets. I mean, NACTO is set up for, of course, not a lot is set up for the situation that we have. And so I think it'd be interesting to have more of a conversation with NACTO to see if they would even allow us. Actually, they have to accept you, right? You would apply and see if that would work. ACHD did just send one or two people to NACTO from their team that they came back, I think, very excited of what they experienced there. So I think that's an opportunity for us to talk with ACHD too, to see what the possibilities are, but it's probably not as straightforward as we might have thought it was when we first came up with the tap.
Yeah.
You know, and AASHTO's even, of course, advancing in ways that are more supportive as well, not as fast as and not quite to the extent, but you know, I think there's more room for that conversation as we move forward.
Well, and you know, like with ITE, that's everybody in the engineering world bow down to ITD, right? But or ITE, but you know, they have crossing guidance that in some cases goes down to every 300 feet in urban downtown areas, marked, signalized, what have you. We're picking and choosing which one of those policies, and I don't mean us. I'm just, you know, our partners in some cases, like you just described, the quarter-mile spacing. A question I would ask you: 10 trips per day has been the standard forever, right? I'm curious, where are things trending between the deliveries, home deliveries, right? Amazon, the UPS, FedEx, everything. And then I'm curious if the household surveys from Compass have backed up any declines in that number. Are we getting to 9 or even less than that, or how is that trending?
I think it's going to be really interesting, you know, the update in the survey, the transportation survey that Compass does every 10 years is due to go out soon as they build for the next long range plan, that hopefully we can get some good data from that. Other than that, maybe that's a request that we could put into ACHD too. You know, it takes a really kind of unique situation. I mean, I can remember when I was at ACHD and how we picked, or traffic had picked a development that was a cul-de-sac that had all the homes that were occupied in it. You know, you don't want one that is for sale or something like that, and that has enough on it that you can really get a black and white number that comes out of it. Because otherwise, if you've got connections out of something, it's kind of hard to come by specific local data. So maybe that's something we could put a request into ACHD as well, to see if they've got some places that they could put some tubes down and see what our counts are in a few different places. And then we can also see what Compass comes up with from their travel survey.
Any more questions? I just have one more comment, but making sure. No, I got to say what I got to say. Oh man. Fee in lieu of, you've heard me say it before on sidewalks. City of Lewiston has one. They have a model ordinance. And I think that there's so many times when we have applications in front of us and it's either we're all in or we're all out, right? It's either nope, you have to build it, or yep, you get a waiver, when in some cases there's middle ground. And to me, I look at the pathway plan, and the ability to implement that plan takes money, right? And in some cases, this might be a mechanism by which those dollars can come about. And it also allows us, I think, some wiggle room in some instances when we have what might seemingly be on the surface an easy decision, but they're not always easy. And so I would just encourage us to look into that and see if it makes sense for the city of Boise as a mechanism to accept a development when we might not always necessarily feel like that sidewalk segment is paramount for one reason or another, right? But in capturing funds that would otherwise go to those sidewalk segments can go to other things that are more pressing. So that's my 2 cents. All right. Happy retirement.
Thank you. And I did
Florida, here you come.
Pardon me?
Florida, right? Everybody goes to Florida.
That's funny. I did just want to put a plug in for ACHD, since they were the ones that did the Cascia Bikeway that is getting all that wonderful use. And we're glad to work with them to get that connection there at Albion, between Albion and the park, to further it. But just really want to give kudos to ACHD for the work they've done there. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, team. Crystal, you can go over our agenda.
Mr. Chair, that's just what I was going to ask you. Let's do it.
Boogie.
Okay. So starting from the top, we do have 6 minutes that we need to approve. So make sure we get those at the beginning. And the next item probably, or I guess the first item before we do the consent agenda, or actually, I don't remember which goes first. Item 2 did not post the site, and so we cannot hear that tonight. So we just need to defer that to the next hearing, first and foremost. And then back up at the top of the agenda, we've got an appeal of DRH 2333 by the Royal Plaza Master Owners Association at 120 North 12th Street. This is an appeal of the Design Review Committee's approval of a modification to the conditions of approval for a previously approved 26-story mixed-use building to allow early morning concrete pours during construction on the property. This is in a C5 DD zone, and we will be hearing that. We are recommending denial. We don't expect anybody from the neighborhood association or anybody from the public. Again, item 2 is going to be deferred. So we'll move on to item 3 is CUP 2312. I don't know how to pronounce the applicant's name, so I'm just going to let you read that. That is at 1299 North Orchard Street. It's a conditional use permit for a trade / vocational school on 12.21 acres in a C3D zone. We are recommending approval on that and can try for consent. Item 4 is CVA 236 from Amy Young. This is at 10417 West Harvester Court. And it's a variance to encroach into the rear and side setbacks for an accessory dwelling unit on 0.42 acres in an R1B single family zone. We are recommending approval on that and haven't heard anything from neighborhood association or neighbors, so we can try for consent on that if you are willing. Item 5 is PUD 232 from Andy Thompson Construction. That is at 2576 North Linda Vista Lane. It's a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 6 multifamily units on 0.86 acres in an R1C zone. We are recommending approval, but the applicant is contesting condition 2 requiring the consolidation of access points. So we will be hearing that. And we did have a last minute call from a neighbor who will be coming out to speak. Item 6 is CAR 236 from the Conger Group. This was deferred from April 3rd. It's out at 6559 East Zephyr Ridge, and it's a modification to an existing DA to amend conditions on a secondary access requirement for the Rush Valley subdivision situated across 18.4 acres in an R1C DA and R1M DA zone. We are recommending denial of the request, so we will be hearing that, and we do expect some public, although they did not sign up in advance. Item 7 is CPA 236 and CAR 2313 from Micron Technologies. It's at 8000 South Federal Way generally. It's a comprehensive plan land use map amendment to adjust the city area of impact boundary to incorporate 517 acres with an assigned industrial land use designation, an additional 79 acres with a planned community land use designation. Also included is the request to annex those areas or to the 517 acres, excuse me, and modify the existing development agreement to take care of that. We are recommending approval. We can try for consent. We haven't heard anything on that one if we want to. And then finally, the big mouthful, item 8, CAR 2248 from BVA. This is generally located at 6310 South Orchard Street and 5110 South Lake or West Lake Hazel Road. This first one is an annexation of approximately 41 acres with a zoning designation of C2DDA. That's general commercial with design review and development agreement for 26 acres, and then M1DDA for 14.7 acres. A rezone of approximately 19.6 acres from C1D DA to M1D DA is, and a request to modify that development agreement is included within that CAR. But wait, I am not done yet. We've got a CPA associated with it as well. That's CPA 223. And that's the comp plan amendment to change the land use designation of approximately 26 acres of this area from industrial to commercial. And then we've got the sub 23-1. That would be the Innovator Business Park subdivision. And that's a preliminary plat for a mixed use non-residential subdivision of 42 buildable lots on 120.2 acres in that pending M1D DA and C2D DA zone. Okay. There's nothing, nobody has come out against that one. We are recommending approval, so we could try for consent on that at your discretion. So to recap, we have 6 minutes that need to be accepted and voted on. We need to defer item 2. We can try for consent on 3, 4, 7, and 8, and we will definitely be hearing 1, 5, and 6.
All right.
It's a great one for you to take over as chair.
Yeah. All right. See y'all on 13.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There's a chat function in Zoom, though this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begins with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are here in person, then those who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, we are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's hearing. So that's why it is important for you to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead.
Here.
Schaefer. Squires.
Here.
Blanchard.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Gillespie. Finbrock. Ganley.
Here.
Mooney. Five present, 4 absent.
Okay. So on to our consent agenda. We're going to change the batting order up a little bit and begin with meeting minutes. So we have meeting minutes from April 24th, April 25th, April 26th, April 27th, May 8th, and the work session from May 8th. Is there any discussion on any of the items for any of the meeting minutes? Hearing none, we will move all 6 of the meeting minutes to the consent agenda. All right, next up for consent is item number 2. Wait a minute, I apologize. That's not item number 2. That's a deferral number 3. CUP 23-12. Arcteriors, how do you say that? Arcteriors. Okay, I'm going to go with that. Located at 1299 North Orchard Street, a conditional use permit for a vocational school. Is the applicant here or online? I see the applicant is here. Mr. Stewart, is that you?
Yes, that is me. Thank you.
Great. And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, the applicant is in complete agreement with the recommendations of the staff report.
Wonderful. Is there anybody in the chambers or online who wishes to testify against item number 3, CUP 23-12? Seeing nobody in session or online, item number 3 is eligible for the consent agenda. Okay, moving forward to number 4, CVA 23-6. Applicant C. Amy Young, located at 10417 West Harvester Court, which is a variance to encroach into the rear and side setbacks. Is the applicant here present? Yes, you are. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions in the staff report? Yes, you are. Okay, great. Is there anybody here or online who wishes to object or to testify an objection to this item? No. Okay, cool. So item number 4 is eligible for the consent agenda. Moving forward, item number 7. CPA 23-6, CAR 23-13, Micron Technology, a name we know, located at 8,000 South Federal Way, which is a comprehensive plan land use map amendment. Is the applicant or representative of the applicant here or online? Yes, familiar face. Okay. And do you agree with the terms and conditions in the staff report? Yes. Is there anybody in the chambers or online who wishes to testify in opposition to item number 7, CPA 23-06 or CAR 23-13? Seeing none, item number 7 is eligible for the consent agenda. Item number 8 is next eligible for the consent agenda, CAR 22-48, BVA, located at 2310 South Orchard Street and 5110 West Lake Hazel Road. I'm going to move forward to the next one. Do I have to read every bit of that? Yes. Okay, I was trying to avoid this. Item number 8, CAR 22-48, located at 6310 South Orchard Street and 5110 West Lake Hazel Road, an application for an annexation of approximately 41 acres with a zoning designation of C2D and DA, a general commercial with design review and development agreement zone for 26 acres, and M1D/DA, light industrial with design review and development agreement for 14.7 acres, a rezone of approximately 19.6 acres from C1D with DA general commercial with design review and development agreement to M1D with DA, light industrial with design review and development agreement, and a request to modify an existing development agreement. That's the first of 3. Next. What's that? I see how it goes. All right. CPA 22-3 BVA, also located at 6310 South Orchard and 5110 West Lake Hazel Road, a comprehensive plan map amendment, and SUB 23-01, the Innovator Business Park subdivision, 6310 South Orchard and 5110 West Lake Hazel Road, a preliminary plat for a mixed use and non-residential subdivision. Is the applicant in the chambers or online? Really? One more time, anybody from BVA? Nobody. Okay, well, is anybody here or online willing or wanting to testify in opposition to either of those 3 applications? Seeing none. All 3 items that comprise number 8 are eligible for the consent agenda. Anybody willing to make a motion? Yes, Commissioner Stead.
The consent agenda consisting of the meeting minutes, April 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, May 8th, and also items 3, 4, 7, and 8.
Excellent.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Squires. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
just so we don't hold anything up, I am not in favor of putting item 8 on the consent agenda. I think it's too complicated. I think it's, I think a representative should have at least shown up and shown their face and done at least that courtesy to us before putting something like this on the agenda. So I will be a no vote.
Just a point of order, maybe I think we have to pull an item if the commission is not in line with the consent agenda. So we have to pull item 8 then from the consent agenda.
Okay.
That works as well.
Okay. So do we need to amend the motion?
Yes, yeah. So Mr. Chair, I would
Mr. Stead.
amend my motion to exclude item number 8.
I
Excellent.
would concur.
Okay. And a second by Commissioner Squires. We've had any more discussion? Okay. Will the clerk please call a roll?
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Stanley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay. We have item number 2, a request for deferral. This is PUD 23-08 Walsh Homes located at 3712 North Patricia Lane, a modification for a conditional use permit. Is the applicant in chambers or online? Don't have to be. Okay. We're good on that. All right. So is there anybody here this evening that was hoping to testify on item number 2, PUD 23-08? Seeing none, the request is for a deferral to July 10th. Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I move that we defer item number 2, PUD 23-8 until July 10th.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Stead and a second by Commissioner Squires. Any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Stanley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Excellent. Okay, now on to the show. Item number 1. This is an appeal of design review committees. It's DRH 23-33 Royal Plaza Master Owners Association, Inc. The project is located at 120 North 12th Street. And again, this is an appeal made by the Master Owners Association of the decision from Design Review Committee. So with further ado, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As you just mentioned, this is an appeal of a Design Review Committee decision. The proposed project is located at the corner of 12th Street and Idaho in the core of downtown Boise. It is a proposal for a mixed-use residential building, ground floor commercial, a parking garage. In total, the building is 26 stories and will be a significant addition to downtown. So at the March 8th, 2023 design review hearing, the applicant brought forward a request to modify the conditions of approval that were placed on the application when it was approved by the design review committee. That condition was that construction is limited to the hours of 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. on weekdays and 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. This is a standard condition of approval that is placed on design review applications. In the subsequent time since this approval back in 2021, we have modified the way that we do business and added some provisions that applicants can make an easier request to modify conditions of approval and related to construction activities. This is a request that we have seen a few times in the past, and I believe that the commission has as well recently. So at that hearing, the design review committee did modify the conditions of approval. The applicant had requested a 4 a.m. start time for large concrete pours for the project on some limited days for about a year of construction. A few days a month when they do these significant pours. The applicant is here, will testify about how many they have of those and what they expect to see there. In approving the modifications to that condition, the design review committee did add some additional language. They required a schedule of the extended pours to be provided to the adjacent residents to the project monthly. And then if there are changes or that pour was not going to take place, they're required to notify the residents within 3 days of that scheduled pour that there was a change to that monthly schedule they distributed. So a repeal was submitted by the Royal Master Owners Association, which is the adjacent residential building to this project. On the vicinity map, they are located at the corner of 11th and Main, down there at the southeast corner of the same block that this project is on. So certainly folks that would be heavily impacted by construction activities on this site. The grounds for appeal are in your the memo distributed to the commission tonight and here on the screen. And staff has taken a look at these grounds for appeal. And we do find that the committee was within their purview in making the decision to modify the condition of approval. It was based on application materials submitted in the public record. The design review committee listened to testimony both from the applicant and from adjacent residents in terms of the impacts of the noise. Ultimately, the commission or the committee decided that while this is a significant inconvenience, and they did recognize that, it is an activity that is typically associated with downtown construction and it would be anticipated in the downtown core. They found that the time that it takes to pour these large volumes of concrete justify the extension to the hours. The applicant had some information they presented about the safety of the public transportation system with additional trucks on the roadway during the busiest times of the day as part of their justification. And also just the fact that the concrete pours this large take a very long amount of time to complete. If they were not granted the extended hours of construction, they would have to modify the construction methods that they are using to pour these large slabs and break them into 2 pours instead of doing them in 1. And the applicant has some detailed information about that in their presentation as well. So based on all of that, we did find that the design review committee acted within their authority. It was based on relevant information and testimony in the public record. And we would recommend that you deny the appeal and uphold their decision. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Okay. Is the applicant present? I think is it in this case, Ryan Hager? It's Austin. Are we going the royal people? Okay. 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 That's why it's backwards here. That's why. Okay. So in this case, we're going to go with the appellant, in this case, the representative from the Royal Plaza Masters Owners Association, which is John Marshall. John, you signed up here. Are you present? This must be you. Okay. Come on up.
Thank you.
If you would please start with your name and address for the record.
Certainly. My name is John Marshall. I live at 1112 West Main, Boise, Idaho, 83702, number 504. I am a resident of the Royal Plaza building, and I'm here tonight, though, in my capacity as a representative of the Owners Association, representing the broader range of ownership interests with all the owners in the association. I don't need to take a ton of time here. I think our appeal is straightforward. As Josh indicated, the existing condition of approval is one that we feel appropriately balances interest. It's a start time of 6:30, end time of 6 p.m. We just assume not have that, but of course that's not unreasonable. And we understand that we live downtown and there are construction projects happening, and we fully recognize that and are appreciative actually of the builder's efforts to date to work with us and be considerate. And we've had some good interactions on many different things. But what we're asking tonight of you all is to balance the competing interests of 2 downtown neighbors. Now, on the one hand, you've got the builder who wants to efficiently build their building. And on the other hand, you have the neighboring owners, like literally the adjacent neighbors. Like you saw the map, and we're right next door, and their staging areas to the west, and then the building is right to the north of ours. And so the impacts of this building are quite significant. I don't think disputed. I mean, the impacts of the construction noise, the light from the crane, and the floodlights to get construction during times when it's not light is significant. There's the noise, there's the dust. I mean, it's a significant burden on the residents of the Royal Plaza. And so we're asking you to balance interests. On the one hand, again, you've got the interest of the builder to go more efficiently on large concrete pours. Our interest is, as neighbors, to not have that construction impact happening in what we consider the middle of the night. And we think it's completely feasible and reasonable based on the testimony so far for these pours to happen. And if it takes two times to do a single pour, that's not going to significantly affect the timing of this project. It's a 2.5 to 3 year build, I believe. And so if you've got, say it's 10 days, 20 more days, it does not significantly impact the time of construction. However, those times when you do have the construction starting at 4 a.m., there's a significant percentage of the members or the owners of the Royal Plaza who just aren't going to be able to sleep. The noise and the light and the dust, it's very, very impactful and very disruptive. And so we're asking that you balance that interest and say, between the efficiency of the build versus the impact on the neighbors and the fact that it's not going to significantly increase or even really measurably increase or decrease the amount of time it's going to take to construct this building, recognizing the severe impact to the neighbors, the balance is appropriately struck by the existing condition of approval, which is that 6:30 start time. And again, the impact to that 4 a.m. start time on the neighbors is significant enough where we feel is not justified by whatever convenience is added to the developer or the builder in terms of its construction. With that, I guess I'll close and stand for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Stand close here. We'll be coming back to you momentarily, likely. So if I can now hear from the applicant, this is a representative from McElvain Companies. Anybody here to testify? Come on up. If you can, please again state your name and address.
Thank you. Austin Conger, McElvain Construction, 5700 West Gowan Road, 83709. Is the clicker working, Josh? Okay. So 12th and Idaho is a 26-story cast-in-place residential project. Concrete activities currently taking place and will continue into January of 2024. Weekly, we have deck pours consisting of approximately 400 cubic yards of concrete per pour. If you look at a standard concrete truck, they hold about 10 yards. So that quick math is 40 trucks. So, one of our big concerns with this is safety. So you got these 100,000-pound trucks rolling down the road. If we're pushed back to a 6:30 start, that pushes us into the downtown corridor's peak time of traffic. Also pedestrians walking back and forth across the street. So we really want to limit the exposure to the public with these high volume pours. We're trying to have a truck there every 7 minutes. So it's a really intense operation. Schedule, we're placing the deck, core wall, which we would call in layman's terms the stairwell and the elevator shaft, and columns all in the same day in order to meet our schedule. Concrete isn't always like it shows in the movies. It takes a little bit for it to set up before you can actually get out on it. So that us starting earlier allows us to get on that slab sooner, so we're not pushing into the late time frame for the pours, late into the afternoon, evening. And also we start the shoring, so that's building the next floor the same day that we pour the deck. This is a standard practice that's done all across the country. Nothing new, but definitely different to our sleepy town of Boise, Idaho. Heat, so that's always a concern. So with the hotter temperatures, it kicks the concrete off into a quicker curing cycle, which is a lot more intensive for our employees that are going to need to work in the afternoon. We're already feeling the temperatures heat. So also it leads to like quicker evaporation from the concrete, which can cause a lot of quality concerns. So we understand that this construction is a nuisance. But one of the ways, some of the ways that we look to eliminate that nuisance or reduce the nuisance is all of the concrete trucks are equipped with white noise back alarms. Our crews will meet to mitigate, to remind them to be respectful of our neighbors in construction and how inconvenient it is from, normal parking to lunch breaks to whatever. And we'll focus specifically on our noise as we're communicating with each other. So we use tower crane lights to reduce the light pollution to surrounding buildings. So we won't have a bunch of light plants, light generators. And here in a couple floors, we're going to be above the Royal Plaza. So they're not going to be getting hit with that light pollution that you'd normally see on a big downtown pour. Also, we use radios to communicate between our pump truck on the ground to the crews up on the deck pouring. And yeah, that's it. I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conger. We're going to see if anybody here from the Neighborhood Association, and if not, we'll come back to questions. Is there anybody from the Downtown Boise Neighborhood Association who's here to testify or online? Seeing none. Okay, at this point, we'll turn it over to questions from the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stead.
I think maybe this is a question for staff or perhaps the applicant, but in the late correspondence that we received, it said that they were pouring as early as 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. Do we know, it sounds like a complaint officer was contacted about that. Do we know if that, has that been confirmed? Is there any follow-up to that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Stead, I would defer to the applicant on that. I am not personally aware of any.
You guys don't know, or the answer is no? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So in our packet, it says something about, since this application, the condition for start times and end times has been modified to be more open. Josh, do you have that modified language available? Could you read it?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Moore, absolutely. So as the commission the condition as the committee approved it?
No, the modified condition that would be on an application today. That kind of updated language.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Moore, so there has not been an update to any of this since the design review committee took their action. So when the design review committee changed the condition of approval, that condition would be in force except for an appeal was filed by the neighbors.
Gotcha. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
And I guess this is kind of the application made a little bit of reference to kind of if a design review application would happen today, it would have a different language to the condition.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down now. Sorry about that. Yeah. So we have changed internal policies. This condition of approval, it just kind of sets those construction hours in stone. The current wording of that condition is that the planning director has the authority to process requests to modify the hours of construction during very limited circumstances. They would have to provide justification. There is not like a set list of criteria, but it would be a request to the planning director to modify outside of 6:30 to 6 on weekdays. Sorry about that.
No. Okay. And Mr. Chair, one more.
Yep, go ahead.
And I think this is a question for McElvain. And I think you sort of answered it, but just to confirm, why not start at 6 and end at 8:30? I know the summer months you're dealing with heat during the day. Totally understand that. Yes, please. But, for the other 8 or 9 months of the year, why not start at 6 and end at 8:30?
So we are on a 6-day deck cycle. So every 6 days we're pouring an elevation. So as you can imagine, all of the operations, when you're doing that much work, you move from a daily schedule to an hourly schedule. So you're trying to cram and get as much done possible within those 12 hours, I guess, of that day that you're allowed to work. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes, to some extent, but I think the biggest is why request to start early as opposed to just staying later because I think a lot of the public comment is about just the earliness of the hour that's you're starting. And it seems like maybe going a little bit later might mitigate some of that, feeling of starting in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you just shift your 12 hours or shift your request for later.
I feel if you shift the summertime hours, granted the next 3 months, call it, you'll be pushing later in the evening. The wintertime months, when it's colder, it takes a lot longer for the concrete to cure. That's when you need the earlier time. You'll be out on that. The guys will be working that slab late and won't be able to accomplish those other activities I'd mentioned other than just pouring that slab.
Thank you.
I've got a couple questions I'd like to ask. So I guess for the first question I would have is you all have been around doing business for quite a number of years. How were you able to carry this out prior to this change from the previous time to the new time of 4 o'clock?
Yeah. So thank you for acknowledging that. This type of construction is a lot different than what we would do on another, podium style type of building. With those podiums, you're usually larger square footage. So in those larger square footage, you're not relying on the floor you're pouring to instantly get back on top of. When you've got larger square footage podiums, like, let's throw 30,000 square feet out there for an example. You typically do about 12 to 15,000 square feet pours at a time. Well, that just happens to be what our 12th and Idaho project is once we go typical. It's a single floor plate. So you are stuck until you get that floor done. You can't go any higher. You can't do any other operations. So it's a rapid game. As soon as you can build on top of that, the better. With a podium or with a tilt up or a grocery store, right? It's different because you usually have larger masses that you're working with. So that's why it's different than what our typical projects that we've done here. I think this is the tallest cast and place structure that's in Boise. So a lot of the other ones were structural steel, I think.
Okay, one more question, and this could be for you, or it could be also be for staff. What I'd like to know is, what is the official action at 4 a.m. that necessitates this is the beginning of activities? In other words, is the staging of trucks at 3:30 in the morning not part of the official green flag, so to speak? And is it, hey, we're pumping concrete here at 4 a.m.? Is that, what exactly is it about the operations that we're describing that is the official start time at 4 a.m.? That's what I'd like to know.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think that's a very thoughtful question. It is the commencement of noise generating activities on site. So it would be the trucks arriving on site. There is in this, as mentioned on Commissioner Moore's question, this new condition that we've written does specify that once the building gets enclosed and there are noiseless activities inside, like painting, something like that, those are allowed to take place at any time, and our new condition clarifies that. But this is outside noise generating activities is that start time.
Is that, you agree with that?
Mind if I step in? So the noise generation that's going to be happening. So at 4 a.m., our pump truck is showing up on site. That's on the opposite end of where Royal Plaza is. That's on 12th side of the project. Idaho side of the project. Sorry, got confused. So that truck's on the opposite end. Around 4:30, 4:45 is when the parade of concrete trucks starts showing up. And really the noise that's going to be the loudest that's generated during that time is the surge from the pump truck and also the concrete trucks going in a high revolution, trying to spin the rest of the mud out of their truck. And then on top of the deck operation, where the craft is actually working, you're going to hear vibrators that are, stinging the concrete, getting it to move around and activate the concrete. As we go up, obviously that noise, the conveyance is going to change, right? We're going to end up shooting over the top of Royal Plaza. They're not going to have nearly as much exposure as they currently do right now for these next few weeks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Let's go ahead and move forward to public testimony. Is there anybody here? You can go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. Anybody here who wishes to testify on this item number 1, the appeal of design review 23-33 in chambers or online? Please come on up. And as a reminder, if you would state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name's Tiffany Pennicard. I live at 1112 West Main Street, number 603. And I was one of the ones that complained when we had a couple times 3 o'clock morning, and it's not just the cement trucks; it's the pound. I have a dog, and it has been better. But for example, as of 6:30, when they start, they're there at 6 o'clock, and we can hear it. And I get it. That's why I moved downtown, because we want to live by these big buildings. I want to be down here by that, but not being able to sleep, it's brutal. And if there's a way to figure that out to where we could extend until 8:30 or whatever that looks like, but it's not just the cement trucks. I am on the corner in the back, and I get up and I look out on my balcony, and I have videos of it, and not because I'm trying to be difficult. It's just, I'm speaking for a lot of us at the Royal. We just can't sleep. So that's it.
All right.
Thank
you very much. Is there anybody else here who would like to testify in this item? Anybody online? Seeing none. Okay. Rebuttal. We're going to go in reverse order now, right? Okay. So our appellant gets to come up and rebut anything you've said. But if you would
Mr.
mind,
Chair.
please.
I'm sorry, it is an applicant sandwich. So next would be the applicant again, and then appellant.
I thought that's why we're okay. So we're going McIlvain and then, okay, my fault. New guy here. Come on up if you can, Mr. Conger. Again, state your name and address one more time for the record, and you'll have a few minutes to rebut anything that you've heard in testimony. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Austin Conger, 5700 West Gowan Road, 83709 Boise. I understand the inconvenience that construction does in a growing city. I have a rather large family, and I understand dogs barking and kids being loud or not getting sleep. I get it. But I feel that the nuisance is worth avoiding any issues with our peak travel times in and out of the downtown corridor for where 12th and Idaho is located, trying to get those concrete trucks out of there as soon as possible. So, yeah. That's my appeal.
Okay, great. Now the appellant, Mr. Marshall, and if you can, again, state your name and address, please, one more time.
John Marshall, 11112 West Main Street, number 504, on behalf of the Royal Plaza Master Owners Association. Just a couple of quick comments. It's completely clear, and we do not dispute the fact that it would be better, more efficient for McIlvain to be able to start their concrete work earlier. But what we've heard is actually quite inconsistent. On the one hand, we hear that it's about getting the trucks out of the area sooner. But the volume of concrete is, I can't remember the numbers, but it's, every 7 minutes a concrete truck comes. So there's concrete trucks on the highway at the peak traffic times, no matter what. It's just, do you have a few more that start earlier? And again, our position is that whatever benefit is gained from that is not worth the impact that it has on us. We also hear that the need to do this earlier start time is because of the heat of the summer. And then it turns out that's actually not about the concrete. It's about the workers and their convenience. And it's the winter time when we actually need to have the earlier start time for the concrete. So it's kind of it's an evolving story. And again, we recognize it's better, it's more efficient for McIlvaine if they can do this at 4 a.m. But again, we're asking you to stay, the project is such that it can get done safely, it can get done efficiently without the impact to the neighbors. And so again, maybe it takes a few more days. They've got to split pours into a couple different days on sometimes, but from our perspective, not having to get woken up at 4 by the light and the noise is certainly worth it. And we'd ask you to keep the existing condition of appeal or the approval in place, which is the start time of 6:30, which is quite early, but we get that, we recognize that. But the 4 a.m. start time, again, we just think it's too much to ask of us, and it's not essential. And so we'd ask you to grant our appeal and deny design review's approval of the application to change that start time to 4 a.m. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marshall. Appreciate it. Okay, once again, this is an appeal of DRH 23-33. The public hearing portion is now closed and the item is before the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we deny DRH 23, the appeal of DRH 23-33 for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Commissioner Moore and a second by Commissioner Stead to deny the appeal. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I think the transcript from the design review committee's meeting is very thorough. I'm comfortable with the questions they asked. I'm seeing this kind of request would be a once a week thing, kind of at maximum on average over the next year. It's a lot, but that will mean ultimately shorter schedule, fewer 6:30 start times that we've done sooner. Instead of extending the schedule, that's more 6:30 start times. So I think it does condense that disturbance. If you're not extending the construction schedule, it does condense that disturbance. That's not part of it, but it does kind of help part of the complaint, I suppose. But on top of that, based on discussion, I think it's a safety and a convenience matter on a few different levels. So in the summer, starting earlier, gets workers out of the heat of the day, which it does get hot, and that is a safety issue. You have workers working in 100-degree heat during the day. That is a safety issue. On the other hand, in the winter, there's potential based on what we heard tonight for it to extend later into the evening, and then we're in a similar situation if we start later. So regardless of what happens, you're either starting really early or you're extending later into the evening, and that's the middle of the night again. So unfortunately, there's not a great solution that everybody will be necessarily happy with, but because it's once a week, because it's to help keep things on schedule, to minimize those 6:30 start times, ultimately, I'm in favor of upholding the denial.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stead.
I don't see any fault with the decision made by the design review committee, which is why I support the motion. But I have so much empathy for this 4 a.m. start time. That is really brutal. And it's too bad that as a city, we're not taking into account the residents' impact in this scenario the first time when it was first discussed. Because I don't feel like I'm here to critique the decision that was made more than the process of their decision, which I don't see fault in. But I would ask the city to please keep a very close eye on compliance for this project, that they are not starting earlier than they have been permitted to, and that they're effectively communicating that schedule as requested, because it sounds like maybe that hasn't been happening to the degree that the city expected it to.
Mr. Chair, I'll just add one thing if I may, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Just for the record, James Smith, Deputy City Attorney, just to add, just to make sure the commission is aware, there's no requirement to find error with the decision below, and that this commission can sustain, deny, or modify the decision and conditions.
Thank you, James.
Even without finding error. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Squires.
I would concur particularly with Commissioner Stad in terms of just so much empathy. I'm one of those crazy people that's usually up at 4:30 every day. But I wouldn't want that noise even being awake. I think this is a really challenging situation. What I'm hoping for is by these earlier start times allows the workers to be more efficient and to get through the process as quickly as possible. And I'm just really sorry that there is the impact to you, because I do believe that rest is really important to human beings. And I will just ask that McIlvain be a good neighbor and stick to the start times. I don't want to hear that this is coming back with earlier times. So that's all I have.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I'm just going to jump in real quick here and yeah, boy, this is going to happen more and more, right? I mean, this is a residential tower. So the folks who live in this future building may very well be impacted by a building right next door and into the future for something very much the same. And as we continue to see more residential uses in downtown, this is a growing pain, right? We haven't had a ton of residential in downtown. It's happening more and more and more. And this is going to continue. The only thing I keep coming back to is, and I don't know if there's merit here, but splitting the difference, does that have any merit in terms of the time? I hear a compelling argument on the construction side, not in my, sort of bailiwick, so to speak. I'm having to take and have faith in that discussion that that's the way that it is. And that unfortunately that does take a lot more time and effort and a complicated build. So I certainly do respect that. The only thing I could keep coming up to is every now and then up here, we hear about this notion of a good neighbor agreement. And that sometimes has, value, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if that even applies here, but I think to Commissioner Squires and Commissioner Stead, everybody's really, we got to comply with that. Right? We can't have a bunch of staging and stuff at 3:30, 4 o'clock is already going to be super early. I will be supportive of the motion, but I really do agree that this has to be, hard and fast at that time. So any other discussion? All right. Will the clerk please call a vote?
Stead.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Stanley.
Aye.
All in favor. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Moving forward. Let's see. Item number 5. This is PUD 23-02 Andy Thompson Construction Inc. located at 2576 North Linda Vista Lane, a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 6 multifamily units. And we'll hear from staff, Jesse Lyle.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, good evening. The item before you is PUD 23-2, a planned residential development comprised of 6 multifamily units located at 2576 Linda Vista Lane on 0.86 acres in an R1C zone. The applicant proposes to add 2 duplexes and 1 small detached unit in addition to the existing single-family home on site, maximizing the allowed density. All parking requirements have been met, and the applicant is proposing detached sidewalks with street trees along Linda Vista. The proposed layout includes 2 access points, keeping the existing driveway to the single-family home and proposed smaller unit at the rear of the property, and a new 20-foot wide common drive to provide access to the 2 duplexes. City policy and the development code require minimizing driveways where possible to improve traffic safety and improve the visual quality of the area. As such, a condition of approval is to consolidate the proposed 2 access points to 1 access point that services all 6 dwelling units.
Additionally, the Boise Fire Department has indicated that the small unit at the northeast corner is not accessible as currently positioned, and the unit must be either relocated or removed. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval with conditions, and I will stand for any questions.
Great, short and sweet. Okay, well, we'll next hear from the applicant, Andy Thompson of Andy Thompson Construction in the house. Great. If you would, just as a reminder, your name and address for the record. Thanks.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Andy Thompson. My address is 1625 Helen Street, Boise 83705. Oh, and just start up?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I'm a builder. I do this very, very seldom. I have a little YouTube video that I can.
Is it loaded already with staff or?
Raising hand now.
Mr. Chair, I'm just promoting him to panelist. Hold, please.
You got a promotion. Check that out. How about that?
Does that come with a vote?
No.
And from there.
Mr. Thompson, it looks like you declined to be promoted to panelist. So just
Oh, wow.
next time, accept it,
Okay, raise your hand again.
please.
And then share screen. There it is. Okay. All right, I'm no good at speaking in front of people, so I just read it out so I wouldn't go on for hours and hours. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to express my point of view about my choice of design. The one disagreement with staff approved conditions of approvals is the consolidation of the two driveways, one existing, one proposed. The other, to remove the detached ADU entirely, we're going to go ahead and do that. That'll satisfy the fire department, solid waste, utilities comments, and many of the others, if not all of the conditions by staff. My client for this design is directly neighboring the project I did 2 years ago. This neighbor came to me not through advertising nor word of mouth, but by admiring my design physically in the real world. These neighbors live on the site in question. They want to add density, which is good for Boise. First, to have a place for their own grown children to live, and also for future potential passive income. I tell you this because the first thing that I told them when they came to me is the city would want to see only one driveway. They prefer to keep their driveway private for their own home, and for good reason. Honestly, who wants to see their grown children coming and going every day? About me, I have a very strict, often self-conflicting design standard that I feel aligns itself very well with the city of Boise. Number one, safety is paramount. Number two, and this is where 2 and 3 tend to conflict, quality, good-looking, pleasing design, and increased density while maintaining privacy. A hard design to make. This is what I've done here for the good of the client, for the good of Boise, and for the good of the neighbors and passersby. I already have a plan B that was originally the plan. It fits all the current conditions of the approval by designing staff. Originally, I designed the 2 duplexes. Originally, plan B was the original plan. And I designed the additional 2 duplexes with the 4 units with the intention of only one driveway accessing the garages from the side. This created a rear private backyard space as required by code that directly butted up against the new sidewalks we had already installed. This results in one of 2 things: a privacy fence that conflicts with my rule of good looking and eye pleasing, or an open backyard that allows more decorative facade but completely contradicts the spirit of the personal private area. It also creates 4 garages in a row in full view of any passersby, while not parallel with the road, are quite obvious and impossible to make look like anything other than random row of storage units. Why didn't I go with the original plan, knowing full well I could have made a much easier time with planning and zoning, saving us all a bit of indigestion along the way? It's because it's not the right design, therefore not the right decision. There are good and justifiable reasons with my current design that should be allowed within the city staff, the Ada County, and the code itself. It has been, and I quote, approved as designed by both, with both new and existing drives by the ACHD, so no conflict there with the county, which would usually have been one of the biggest hurdles. Number two, at my pre-application meeting with planning and zoning, I had specifically asked about the two driveways. To my surprise, a senior member of staff made one of the most amazing comments. He said, in the end, the idea is that it looks like we intended to do it this way, not as if it were there as an afterthought. I was floored. It was a brilliant answer. It mirrored my thoughts on design and infill exactly. Note that in the pre-application notes that it says a single common driveway is preferred. It does not say that it is required. And number three, I believe wholeheartedly with city code 1174.3-0.3C, which states that as a mean to improve safety and traffic, to improve traffic safety and to improve the visual quality of an area, the number of driveway intersections with public or private roadway in residential projects shall be minimized. Now, wouldn't it be easier to say just one rather than to minimize, or must rather than shall? Remove all questions, save us all time. It does not say only one, and I believe that those who wrote the code had a good reason. It is because it could contradict itself. If I could have consolidated the existing driveway and still best improve the visual quality of the area, I would have. Choosing an inferior design was never the intention when the code was written. As for my number one rule, safety, and the first thing the code mentions, the safety aspect of it, this street is littered with private driveways. A pedestrian walking north within 150 feet on that side of the street will walk past three driveways, then the current existing driveway, then the proposed common driveway. There is no surprise or danger to pedestrians or by vehicles entering or exiting. If there were a safety issue, I would have never put a second thought into this plan. From there, thank you for your time. I could go on, but defer to questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Stand close by. We'll go next to the neighborhood association. Is there anybody here or online who is from the West Valley Neighborhood Association who'd like to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to questions from the commission. All right. Anything? Bueller. Okay, well, going once, going twice. Ms. Thompson, you get to rebut nothing. If you'd like, you can come right back up, and if there's anything else you want to add, you're welcome to do that. You're right. We need to do public testimony. Thank you. I'm not feeling no one's going to be here, but let's see. We don't have anybody. Yeah, we do. Wow, man, I'm all over the place. Mark, is it Andrus? Yes, got something right tonight. All right, come on up, Mark. If you wouldn't mind, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Mark Andrews, 2640 North Linda Vista. I was gone when you had your first meeting. I was in Ecuador, so I missed everything. I mainly just showed up to see what was going on because nobody's ever gotten to me on it. It looks good, really. I was amazed. What I would like to see, though, is no parking signs on the road. The road's too narrow on it. If you've ever been down Linda Vista, two cars almost hit each other all the time. It's really, really close. And big trucks, forget it. Car and a truck cannot go by there. That's basically all. My only concern is just like one side of it, put no parking on the street. That way that street's gonna be wide enough for two cars and pedestrians. And it'll be safer for everybody. That's it.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else in the chambers or online who would like to testify on this item number 5? Okay, now seeing none. Okay, now rebuttal to the applicant. Mr. Thompson, is there anything you'd like to add, name and address real quick to?
Andrew Thompson, 1625 South Helen Street, Boise, 83705. Yeah, I'd add no parking signs if the city allowed me. I have no problems with it. The street, we did actually improve both sides, one with my project, and the neighbors joined me with that improvements to save money, 2 at a time kind of things. And they knew that they were gonna try to improve this lot shortly after. So that's where we are. It's already improved both sides. So it's the widest part of the street all the way down. And also ACHD is planning to, in their 2024 budget or workflow, whichever that is, they're actually going to take the entirety of Linda Vista and improve it both sides.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. The public hearing is now closed and the item is before the commission. Item number 5, PUD 23-02, located at 2576 North Linda Vista Lane.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stead.
I move that we approve PUD 23-2 with the terms and conditions as stated in the staff report.
A motion by Commissioner Stead. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Moore, a second. Thank you. All right. Any discussion?
Yeah. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stead.
This seems like an easy I guess we see projects where it's more complicated to do one driveway. And so it makes sense to have more than one curb cut where necessary. But this one looks pretty simple to me to line up with the one curb cut. So I support the consolidation. I think that just makes sense. That makes, better neighborhoods to have fewer curb cuts. I think the ACHD improvements on the horizon is even more reason to reduce those curb cuts. In regards to the public comment about no parking on the street, that's unfortunately not something that the city can mandate. I think that would come from ACHD. So I encourage the resident to look into that because I think that you can do permanent parking, no parking, things like that on the street through ACHD.
Thank you, Commissioner Stead. Any other comment?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
I'll be in support of the motion and the consolidation of the two curb cuts. 100% appreciate trying to minimize the look of 4 garage doors lined up. I think that's absolutely in line with a lot of the goals of design review. But I think because there is an alternate that works functionally with the site, I think it does make sense to consolidate it because there's not really a reason not to besides the garages. And I think that there are ways based on your design that can absolutely mitigate some of that appearance in a really creative way. So I think it makes sense to consolidate because it's possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Squires.
I am in support of the project. I am not in support of the motion. I don't think consolidation is needed in this particular instance. It's a local road. It's not slated to be a collector with traffic. There is very limited direct access to Linda Vista, and I just don't see the need to consolidate it. I think it's so minimal. The impact is going to be it's going to be very minimal, I guess is the point. And I think we should take the opportunity to get a better design. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I'll jump in real quick. Commissioner Blanchard might be thinking about it. I generally understand the the notion of driveway consolidation, especially along arterials and collectors. I tend to agree in this instance with Commissioner Squires, especially looking at the design and noticing that, the way that we do curb cuts, driveways, and so forth, and the sidewalk now is very different than it was in the 70s and 80s, where it was all one line. Now we do this wing design where we wrap and pull back, and it elevates the pedestrian profile, which adds safety and visibility. And I think, as described with a local road, I have much less heartache with that than I would in what we've seen in other applications on arterials. In fact, I think just last month. And I think it lends itself well to the overall design. So there's a trade-off, but I think that the trade-off in my mind is more positive with maintaining the second curb cut rather than the consolidation, for what it's worth.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stead.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Do we need a support from the second? I can't remember. Commissioner Moore, do you want to, you good with that?
I'm not in support of that. Sorry. Just
We
wanna
can
make it
keep the motion on the
complicated.
table and vote. It'll
Okay,
just die.
yeah, we can do that. Before we call the roll, is there any other discussion?
Well, no one expected that this would come to this, but I will chime in as well, Mr. Chair. I do tend to agree with Commissioner Squires. There are so many trade-offs on this one where I would prefer fewer curb cuts. Frankly, the code that staff cites, I think, is really, it's definitely not staff's fault. The code is really not drafted well, and it's probably not going to reappear in the new code because it isn't drafted well. So I think we have leeway here. I don't prefer what is the slot design, but I would definitely take the slot design where you're driving down the street and instead of seeing a building, you're seeing a slot. But I would take that over seeing garages. That is for sure. And so this is a really difficult one. I'm glad we don't have to argue over the ADU, because that's one that we just can't serve safely. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm inclined to take the design as presented and not require that second condition.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Blanchard. So let's go ahead and take the vote. So if the clerk would call the vote first.
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Nay.
Blanchard,
Nay.
Moore,
Aye.
Stanley.
No. So, sorry.
Oh. 2 in favor, 3 opposed, motion fails.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, the motion fails. Do we have another motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Squires.
I would make a motion to approve PUD 23-02 with the elimination of site-specific condition number 2.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Squires. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Blanchard. Any discussion?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion? Okay. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
No.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
No.
Stanley,
Aye.
3 in favor, 2 opposed, motion carries.
Okay, great. Before we move on to item number 7, why don't we take a 5-minute break, since this one's going to be a minute. So we'll reconvene in 5. Thank you. We'll let staff take it away. Go ahead.
Great. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, before you tonight is a request to modify an existing development agreement. The project site is located within the southern region of the Southeast Planning Area. It's characterized by low rural residential densities with large industrial sites nearby. The Micron campus is located to the southwest, and further east is rural residential within Ada County. The subject property is within the Wildland Urban Interface Zone B. It is accessed via East Columbia Drive, which is a dead-end roadway exceeding 1.5 miles in length. The original project was a request to annex 110 acres with the zoning designation of R1C and R1M.
with a residential subdivision comprised of 410 single-family lots, 2 multifamily neighborhood commercial lots, and 52 common lots. Initially, this application was denied by council. However, a request for reconsideration was made in which the city council remanded the application go back to Planning and Zoning Commission with direction to the applicant to provide a development agreement with specific language that the council wanted to see with the annexation and rezone request. Specifically, they wanted to include a limit of the number of lots that could be platted until a secondary access road was provided. They gave direction on which street construction traffic can use, and also identified a zone that the property will revert back to if the secondary emergency vehicle access road could not be provided. At that time, it was anticipated that the applicant could work with neighboring property owners to identify an emergency access road, ultimately connecting East Columbia Road with Highway 21 to the north. In the 2 years since the 70th lot received its final plat, the applicant was unable to make any headway in obtaining an easement for that proposed emergency access road. It should be noted in 2021, the applicant did propose to create a separated access road running parallel and north of East Columbia Road between the Micron campus and this existing subdivision. The intent was to help ensure that Columbia Road would remain passable at all times. However, this request was not approved by ACHD and ultimately was withdrawn. The applicant has taken steps to try and address the safety concerns by working with a wildland fire expert to develop a robust wildfire safety and mitigation plan. The applicant's proposal before you this evening is to modify the conditions related to providing that secondary access and replace it with the proposed wildfire mitigation as listed here on your screen. During review, public comment in opposition was received for the proposed modification. They cite concerns with safety, increased risk to life and property with the proposed alternative mitigation and lack of secondary access. Additionally, it is noted that an updated fire comment letter was received that clarified they are not in support of the requested modification. As a reminder, the commission can add, delete, or modify conditions of the DA, which ultimately are considered by the city council. I wanted to identify some possible action items for you this evening that you can consider. One would be to recommend denial of the DA modification as proposed by the applicant. The zoning of the remaining unplatted parcels would then revert back to an A2 open land as cited in the development agreement. Second, you can recommend approval of a modification that would eliminate the time frame required to obtain and install the secondary access road. This would allow the applicant more time to work through options on secondary access without reverting the property back to A2. 3, you can recommend approval of the proposed DA with conditions added by the Planning and Zoning Commission, so at your discretion. Or 4, recommend approval of the applicant's proposed DA, which would include that mitigation plan and replace the requirement for secondary access. In conclusion, the planning team does recommend denial of the proposed DA modification. However, we would recommend and support approval of a modification to the DA that would eliminate the timeframe requirement to obtain that secondary access. With that, the motion needed this evening is a recommendation, and I'll stand for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Delaney. Is the applicant present? Okay, Mr. Clark, you know the drill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have my fire expert friend with me, and I'll probably share, I will share a couple minutes with him if that's okay. Okay, so my name's Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise is my business address, and I do have a presentation, so if we could pop that up. Nice. Okay, so this application is one that's got a long history. If anything, I hope to keep everybody awake tonight with this tangled web of agency and and hearing comments. But I want to go back to, I think this was in 2016, 2017. This is an area of the city, is the commission is well aware, where the city has looked to grow. It's one of the last kind of large areas where the city has the potential of adding, thousands of lots. And there's long been an effort to try to promote that growth. But it's been a bit of a struggle, and that has been in large part due to it being the area being controlled by Micron and Simplot, essentially. But when we were coming through with this initially, we were part of a group that helped to promote this East Columbia sub-area master plan, and you can see on that most of the property owners there, or most of the property is controlled by Micron and Simplot. There are a few properties that are in the other category, and those are the purple properties, and they constitute largely the 5 neighborhoods that have been approved within Boise City. That interim plan was reviewed. That's what allowed us to move forward at the time. The city also did a fair amount of utility planning and work at that point. There is sewer capacity for all of the lots within the 5 neighborhoods that are shown here, with Rush Valley taking up essentially the last of that sewer capacity. So when we look at these projects, this is not a look through the door and think, okay, who else are we letting in kind of a situation. Unless things change out there, Rush Valley truly is the last of the development that would come through, both due to ownership and due to utility capacity. So amongst those 4 other subdivisions besides Rush Valley, there's about 400 units. None of those, they were all approved prior to Rush Valley. None of them are subject to sprinkling requirements. Rush Valley, after several hearings, if I had an excuse for the loss of hair, which happened during law school, so I can't really blame it on this, but Rush Valley would have definitely contributed. But we were approved in 2018 for the 412 lots on 110 acres. There was a requirement of sprinkling at the time. Little did I know that I wasn't happy with Ron Johnson at the time when he applied the sprinkling requirement, but that is something that we agreed to and applies. And again, as was mentioned, there was a development agreement that requires the secondary access before we can go above the 70 units. So when we talk about the single access, I do want to clarify the single access condition really only applies in the area that's shown on the screen in green. The areas in blue on the west are within Micron, and there are accesses along there. The area where you're really constrained is just short of a mile along the green area. As we develop and as Painted Ridge develops and as Sunny Ridge develops on the east, though that area does have secondary accesses through the neighborhoods that are being provided as we go. So we're really focused on the green segment as we discuss this tonight. So at the time of the approval, we were focused on 2 different agencies. ACHD, as you know, has a policy on single access. ACHD reviewed this and approved a waiver of their policy. It was largely based on the condition of Columbia Road and its dimensions. So you have 26 to 32 feet of pavement, and this is just a screenshot from ACHD's decision. Broad shoulders, and ACHD concluded that if the entire road were blocked due to a crash, there's adequate room to use the shoulders. And why did they say that? Well, this is what Columbia looks like. In addition to the paved areas of 26 to 32 feet plus the shoulders, that dimension is actually about 92 feet from fence to fence, 50 feet if you look at the pavement from shoulder to shoulder. Boise Fire Department reviewed this at the time. They were the other major agency that was involved. Their approvals of the prior subdivisions did not impose a sprinkling requirement. Bonneville #2 went through with the final plat at the same time as we were going through and didn't have a sprinkling requirement. But when they reviewed this, they did approve it. No, the secondary access was not a requirement of Boise Fire. What Boise Fire said was that if you don't have a secondary access, then you have to sprinkle all the units. And that's in accordance with International Fire Code at the time. This is the language from the cited section where there's more than 30 dwelling units on a single public or private fire apparatus access road. You can, 2 directions are not required as long as you have an automatic sprinkler system. That is the same language that's in the 2021 International Fire Code. It hasn't changed before or since. So again, after several hearings, the 70th lot requirement was imposed by council. That was in excess of fire code. That was not a requirement of Boise Fire. It was not a requirement of ACHD. So moving on to date, since then, the project is now within a 4-minute response time for Boise Fire Department. Over the last year and a half, we've kind of followed the Micron applications to see what would happen there, see if maybe that would provide the fire a secondary access. They've shown that on their plans, but it's my understanding that that's not a requirement and there is no timeline for it, though it does now show on ACHD's CIP and master plan, which is, I would say, an improvement. We have worked with those property owners to obtain an emergency access. We've had no success. So as Delaney mentioned, we have also looked at other applications to try to address this. One of those was to do a parallel road in that green area that I mentioned before to try to keep that area as wide open as possible. We discussed it with ACHD. They ultimately came to the conclusion that they would not support it. And that was because they had already approved the single access waiver. In other words, they had decided that it was just fine and that any additional maintenance that we had offered to cover the maintenance, but any additional maintenance that came along with that was not something that they wanted to incur. So the question is, if secondary access is beyond our control and our best efforts at this point, and then what do we do? We don't think that there is a safety issue, but if there is one, doing nothing doesn't improve the existing situation for 400 plus lot owners. So we've been looking at it from the perspective of how can we improve the situation and allow the project to move forward. And so we've worked with Charlie to develop a wildfire safety plan. And I see that I've been going a little bit long here, so I'd ask for some indulgence from the chair to allow Charlie some time to go over that wildfire safety plan and allow you guys to ask some questions, and then I'll come back and follow up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Charlie, if you would you state your name and address for the record, and we'll go as much time as you can get through.
I talk very fast,
All right.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Charlie Bond with Environmental Conservation Services, 5011 North Clearview. I guess it's street, sorry, new house, Eagle, Idaho 83616. As stated, I developed the wildfire safety mitigation plan. Under code, basically under city ordinance 4103-2, because of where they're located, which is Wui Wildland Urban Interface, specifically in RI1, which is, sorry, I got to look at that, the ignition resistant construction zone 1. The ability of the proponent can actually ask to do a wildfire safety plan. Basically, you have baseline standards that's already identified for WUI IR1 that basically the fire department's already come up. What we can do with the wildfire safety plan is basically exceed those, which we've done significantly. The biggest things we have on this one is multiple aspects. I think we need to look at this one. The structural requirements already identified. They meet Boise City Code 4109, which again is Class 1 fire existence resistance under the International Wildland Urban Interface Code. So they meet and or exceed those already. In addition to that, landscaping requirements. Under existing code, you have 30 feet of dispensable or defensible space. That's it. The additional what we've added is there's a requirement for all external lots to actually have a review by a fire-wise safety specialist for all of those landscaping plans to basically control the type and connectivity of vegetation on those areas. If you actually look at now, some of the houses that are already out there are basically landscaped like the north end of Boise. That is not a good place to be putting those vegetation. So that's part of the construction standard, the landscaping standards they're added to that. In addition to that, homeowner requirements. There's a list of 13 homeowner requirements on there that all exceed everything currently identified in Boise Code. In addition to that, limit on outdoor fire pits. Right now, there are no fireworks. In addition to that, there's also right now nothing identified for no outdoor fire pits. This one that does identify those. In addition to that, homeowner assessments and audits. This is actually one of the biggest ones. It's not required. Under this plan, every time a new home is on the periphery is put out there, the homeowner has to go through basically an education with the firewire specialist will come through and identify why they're in WUI, why they're limited on the type of landscaping they can do, the structural requirements, and go through all that with the landowner. Now, if this was a one and done, we'd run into issues over time. The issue of this is every 5 years, there's an additional audit. So every 5 years, these external landowners actually have an audit on their landscaping, structural requirements, all that, to make sure they are in compliance. So there's actually an enforcement mechanism with that. Next to that is external fuel break. Again, this is not required under current Boise ordinance. There's a 30-foot fuel break around the entire periphery of the proposed development. This does one of two things. First of all, it breaks up the continuity of fuels to the structures. Second, it allows an access point for when fire gets out there, fire can actually use that access point to, one, get to the periphery faster and quicker response, and they can actually use that for a back burn. So they can use that to back burn to the phase. That is not a requirement. That'll be around the entire proposed development. In addition to that, there's also 5 wildfire egress points. This again increases the speed by which the fire assets can get out and fight the fire outside of the development itself. So it increases the probability of them getting to the fire before the fire gets to the structures. And then the last one, multiple on-site refuge areas. There's actually 3 on-site refuge areas. This is specifically for shelter in place. If somehow Columbia Road is shut down and nobody can get out, there's actually 3 sizable areas within the development that people can go to, safe areas. Each one of these will be equipped with safety materials, there's fire blankets, there's all that stuff will be in each one of these communication devices. So worst case scenario, if they do have to shelter in site, this is a safe place to do so. None of these requirements are outlined in any current Boise ordinances. They are outlined in this fire plan and have to be implemented. Last one, communication plan. So in this one is we have an emergency contact for all agencies. After that, a residential call tree, specifically emphasizing residents the need if they need to be taken out. We'll call it high risk residents for everybody to identify, be able to call them and go help them if they need help. Last one is emergency response that identifies all the maps of all the egress points, fire hydrants, and access and egress points for the community and their escape plan. All of that is required. All of that is required under the wildland fire safety plan that's been proposed. And all of those are not required under the current Boise ordinance. So it is, we like to say, a robust fire plan and is intended to basically significantly reduce risk for wildland fire in the area. With that, any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll come back to questions. Is anybody here from the Southeast Neighborhood Association? I don't see.
Mr. Chair, can I just wrap up real quick on a
Oh, I'm sorry. I
quick
thought
points?
you were concluded. Please
Sorry
quickly
about
though.
that. Yeah, I will be quick. For the record, Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street. So this map kind of illustrates what Charlie was talking about with the areas that allow wildland fire access points, the perimeter break, as well as the refuge sites. And I'll blast through this. This is from the fire department's letter, and they indicated that it is a robust wildfire and safety plan, that it can be approved with an edit, removing the sentence stating that fire sprinklers would not be required once the plan is fully implemented. That was a misunderstanding. We will be keeping the fire sprinklers in place. So our proposal is only to modify the development agreement to remove the requirement of secondary emergency access in favor of the wildfire safety and mitigation plan. We're not talking about changing any of the lot dimensions, any of the other standards. And I'll talk about 2 last things. One is that the wildfire plan improves the overall situation. It provides a break protecting the neighbors from the south where the wildfires are likely to come from. And it also provides secondary routes up to our green segment for Sunny Ridge, Bonneville Point, and Farewell Bend if Columbia Road is ever blocked in that blue area that's north of our project. In contrast, this is the existing situation. This is one of the neighbors has a fire pit out into that area. What we're looking to do is to try to close all that off and end up with a situation that we think will be safer. And so again, our proposal is to change that development agreement as we've listed here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay. Neighborhood Association is Southeast, Eric Berg. I don't see in person nor online. Nope. Okay. Okay. With that, the item is before the commission for any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So this may be a little bit in the weeds, but the particular amendment to the IFC is a City of Boise amendment, meaning is specific to Boise as opposed to elsewhere. Do you know off the top of your head where that amendment came from, or like why it was added to Boise's city code?
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioner Moore, that request actually did come from City Council for City of Boise Fire to pass an ordinance to revisit how many of those lots could be platted in a situation like this. So I think officially that took effect in end of 2020 or into 2021. But it was a result of some of these applications that we had seen come in, and kind of beefing up some of the things that the city of Boise would like to see as it related to wildfire risk.
Any other questions? I have a question, then I will ask of the applicant. Mr. Clark, I'm not sure if you can answer this great, but you referenced, as well as Mr. Vaughn, landscaping already out there. You showed a picture of fire pits. There was obviously a reference to fireworks. And it sounds as though, as of right now, there's very little enforcement because these things exist. So can you speak to that? I mean, we already have a whole bunch of homeowners out there, and we have one ingress egress route, and we have conditions that could potentially bring about a fire. Your proposal is suggesting a whole slew of treatments that would hopefully prevent a fire, but of the existing neighborhoods, what about the enforcement of that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, why don't I let Charlie talk about the existing vegetation and that situation, and then I'll come back and hit the final piece of your question.
Mr. Chair, on that one, relative to the vegetation that we have out there, it's a mix of basically shrub, grass, steppe. So highly low stature fuels on the base, but larger with the shrubs. Relative to the existing, when you talk about landscaping, again, when we're talking landscaping on that one, we're talking about the homeowner landscaping. So that's a big one. Relative to those that are there are no current wildland fire plans anywhere out there. It's just current fire code, and there is limited enforcement or enforceability on those. The one different one with this fire plan is, and kind of didn't touch on it, there's also a funding component to this. This requires that every homeowner within the development pays $60 per year into this fire fund. The fund is specifically used for maintenance of the fuel breaks, conducting the homeowner assessments, basically making sure that we implement the fire plan, which that's when you're talking about is, honestly, historically, they've had development out there. There is no enforceability. This gives us a mechanism by which we can have enforceability, not only by the residents themselves, but they'll actually be paying into a fund to take care of that for them.
Can you clarify on this fund? Are you talking about the next phase and the new rooftops, or all rooftops, including the new and old?
So, Mr. Chair, on that one, the only one for the wildland fire plan so far would be those new existing units. You can't put that on the existing people as well. So the intent of all this also is the new proposed development will actually act as a buffer for those two units there. Again, there's some more units that are further to the east that would be unprotected and will continue to be unprotected. But the intention also is, once you start that, is to start kind of expanding on that, coordinating with both the BLM on those. We can do fuel projects with the BLM, restoration, rehabilitation projects. Those funds are a big component of that. And then working with BLM, there's a significant amount of area on that. I work with them all the time. They really like to do fuels projects, especially on those. Nobody's really really implemented any of those with the existing developments. I think this development can actually push that forward and be a mechanism by which to bring in the other developments to do some of the same measures that are there.
Okay, would you mind pulling up go ahead, Mr. Clark, you have something to add?
I think I may be headed where you're headed. Can I pull up the map again, guys? Okay. So I think this map helps quite a bit to illustrate what Charlie's talking about. And when we're talking about adding this project, we're talking about buffering the entire southern portion of the property, which is where the wildfires are likely to come from, across that open space coming north. And, you know, a couple of items to answer Mr. Chair's questions. Like one, this would apply to all of Rush Valley. We still remain in control of the CCNRs. And so we can make those modifications to incorporate this for the existing 68 lots. So we haven't actually, to address something that Delaney mentioned, we actually haven't hit the 70th lot yet. We're only at 68. But this would be something that would be applicable to everyone. It would also be, you know, from our perspective, we're looking at this as a benefit. This would not be something that's limited to, in an emergency, to the use of just the Rush Valley neighbors. If there were a shelter in place situation, these the refuge sites would be available to all of the neighbors if they were to come. And I think with that, I'll maybe turn to your questions, Mr. Chair.
Do you have a quick question? Like, oh. Okay. Can you pull up that picture in your presentation that showed the roadway as it looked towards your development?
It's actually looking towards Micron, I think, if I remember correctly, but. This one's easier to see.
Yeah, either one of those, that's fine. So a question I would have, and this might be for Mr. Vaughn, but those power lines, right? Those power lines, high wind coming through, snap, next thing you know, brush fire out there. What's the scenario that would unfold, you know, based on the existing residents, the proposed new residents? How does, I mean, walk us through a little bit about this is that separation between the development and their egress route towards the west. And we have these power lines in between, right? So can you illustrate how this would go down if you can, if this were to be the scenario that would unfold?
Mr. Chair, on that one. So yeah, that would be technically, we'll call it the worst case scenario, which would be, we're severing the only access egress point, a wildland fire progresses, and then that's where the shelter in place. The intent of those is if you're trapped within a development itself and cannot get out, you have an area to shelter in place, which is exactly what it means. You can go there. Theoretically, the fire would burn through. The change in, we'll say, historic communities where it will burn up and then start the community on fire. The intent of the wildfire plan with the fuels break, the 30-foot fuel break, as well as the landscaping requirement for the external units, now you have a 50 to 60 plus up to 100-foot break in fuels. The intent of that one is when the fire hits, it stops there. So that's why the landscaping, all that stuff is basically critical for protecting the community itself. And then within the community, you also have these areas that even if the community were on fire, you can go into and they're protected areas. So you can see a couple of these, especially the largest one, which is actually underneath the power line up there, would be potentially underneath the easement. That's a 1,000-foot wide easement. That entire area would be basically have limited vegetation. That area right now is kind of a mix of native shrub grasses with a lot of invasive species. The proposal on that one would be basically to limit the vegetation completely, making that almost a xeriscape, if you will. You can incorporate trails, anything, but the intent of that would be zero vegetation. So if a fire were ever to go through there, there is no vegetation whatsoever. And you can see the smaller greener areas, they're just green grass. So that would be the worst case scenario. And if you did it, that would be emergency access egress point. That's what basically a shelter in place is for, is if all of those are cut off, you still have this in place.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Squires.
You say that, Mr. Bond, you say that it is the worst case scenario, but that's assuming that there's no wind. That's assuming it's burning at a level plane. What happens when we have 50-mile-per-hour winds that are blowing and fire is jumping?
Correct.
Then what?
Mr. Chair, I was going to say council person, sorry. Commissioner Squires. Again, we can only plan for so much on that when we can get, if you go down to, Colorado, 100-mile-an-hour winds. Again, the biggest one with that one is try to basically limit the connectivity of fuels. If you have a 100-foot break or even a 60-foot break in those fuels, the probability of any of those structures starting goes way down. The big one that you result in, like the Colorado fires that we don't run into here, you hear reference to ember accumulation. The nice thing, if you will, is because of the fact that we don't have a lot of shrubs and we have 0 trees in that area, your amount of ember accumulation goes way down. So when you get those big winds, at that point, it's direct fuel length only. Ember accumulation is minimized. But again, the structural components take that into consideration as well. So you do have vent, all your vents are there's no ember accumulation points, venting, cementatious siding, Class A roofs, all of those are built into the houses themselves. So it's kind of a double win. Again, you can plan as much as you want. And at some point though, you'll get that with 100-mile-an-hour winds. Shelter in place is still, that's your final, basically emergency use, if you will.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. So at this point, we will turn it over to the general public. I don't have anybody signed up on a sign-up sheet. So if you are in the chambers and wish to testify, please come forward now, and we'll get to the folks that are online momentarily. Is anybody in the chambers that would like to testify? Okay, go ahead and come on up. It doesn't matter which order. Yep, up to this here. If you would just state your name, your address, pull that microphone nice and close, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you. There we go.
My name is Amy Blazak. I live at 6704 East Black Gold Street. That's in the Sunny Ridge subdivision. So first of all, thank you for letting me address the commission. You've heard all of the details about the proposal from the Conger Group. The main problems that I have with this proposal is, first of all, it seems to not take into account the 4 other subdivisions that are out there. Sure, it's great for Rush Valley to have all this, protection, but we don't have that. And as you could see from their picture, they border on one side of our subdivision, but other 2 sides are wide open. And also the other thing is that it passes on the cost for maintaining and the responsibility for maintaining this plan to the Rush Valley residents, which, hopefully they would do that, but no guarantee. I noted in the letter from the fire chief that he referred to the updated fire code, which I think you brought up a little bit ago. But I was surprised to read that code says if there's 60 or more single family houses, there's supposed to be access from 2 directions for fire equipment to come in. Well, that's what we're talking about here, is that we need access from more than one direction, because right now we have access from one direction, and that direction is a dead end road, as you heard. So I don't know why the ACHD ever approved the Rush Valley division in the first place, because if it's finished, there will be a total of about 800 houses out there with access in one direction, in and out. And I think that's a problem. But even in that exception that they granted, they didn't ever say that they were doing away with the requirement for the 2 directions, the secondary access road that was needed. So that condition was part of the agreement to rezone the land to even start Rush Valley to be built. So that was already done and agreed to long before, and signed by Corey Barton, long before the city adopted a new fire code. So it seems like, to me, it makes no sense at all to be building more houses out there without a secondary road from a different direction. So once again, here we are, the neighbors, trying to encourage and hope that the commission and the city council will stand up for the safety of the current residents. So we're asking that you would deny the proposal that's on the table. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead. Name, address for the record. Thanks.
My name is Rachel Grimsrud, and I live at 6761 East Black Gold Street, and my property directly borders the Rush Valley subdivision. So So I'm a resident of the Sunny Ridge subdivision in Southeast Boise, and I've attended every one of these meetings, have not missed one regarding the Rush Valley subdivision. I've expressed my concerns on this matter to both the Planning and Zoning Committee as well as the City Council. The current proposal for the developer would remove previously placed requirements of a secondary access road, a road that they promised they would build in order to get their original application approved. The current proposal includes actions to reduce fire danger, which is great. I have no problems with this, but the inclusion of that plan and additional access doesn't mitigate the original need for the secondary access road. Idaho experiences wildfires every summer, and they burn everything in their path. In the event of a wildfire, the only option is to evacuate. Without a secondary access road, thousands of people will have the same dead-end road to evacuate. With a fire bearing down on us, no one's going to be hanging around to make sure the developer's fire mitigation solutions will work. We're heading out, we're evacuating. As more homes are added without an additional evacuation route, the risk to life increases exponentially. When considering this proposal, you also need to remember the existing homes and subdivisions in the immediate vicinity of the Rush Valley subdivision. A fully completed Rush Valley would more than double the number of residents and vehicular traffic. Conservatively speaking, in the event of an evacuation, that means there's an additional 860 cars that would need to use Columbia Road to evacuate the area. If you add that to the subdivisions that already exist, that means over 1,500 cars trying to evacuate on a dead-end road the same time emergency personnel are trying to come in on that dead-end road. On April 3rd, 2018, I stood in this very room and warned the City Council that this day would come. The developer of Rush Valley promised the City Council they would build an emergency access road through land that they did not and still do not own. 5 years ago, the owners of the land in question made it very clear they had no intent of selling their land. I warned the City Council at that time that the developers would not get access to the land and they would request an exception be made to eliminate the emergency access road. That was 5 years ago. I promised then that the City Council I'd be back, and here I am. I'm asking you to hold the developer accountable to their promises, the promises that they made to get the Rush Valley subdivision approved in the first place. They have a responsibility to follow through on the promises, regardless of how difficult that might be. No future phases of the Rush Valley subdivision should move forward until the developer fulfills the promise to the City Council to build that emergency access road. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Anybody else in the chambers who wishes to testify? Yep. Come on up. Name and address and go for it. 3 minutes. Thank you.
Judy Carls, 8076 South Bogus Ridgeway in Boise, 83716. She was so eloquent. I have called in multiple fires already. We are on the east edge of Sunny Ridge subdivision. I have called in multiple fires. We have been stuck in the subdivision when there was a fire on Technology Way, which is the route from Columbia to Gallon Road. And so we have been stuck in the subdivision when there was a fire. Eventually, after a couple of hours, they finally opened up the parking lot of Micron to allow traffic through. If somebody had had an emergency during that time, I don't know what they would have done. They talk about the fires mainly coming from the south. I beg to disagree. I have seen them from the east multiple times. They've started from the west when they were by Micron, between Micron and our subdivisions. In 2008, we lived down in Columbia Village, and I watched houses burn within minutes on Oregon Trail Heights. A lady died. I do not believe that that is acceptable to put us in the position where existing homes, we're going to be fighting traffic if we can even get out. If that road is even going to be open, if there really needs to be a secondary access, it's basically been a bait and switch. Give us the authorization, we'll get the secondary road, then they don't follow through. They talk about the audits and then doing them every 5 years. I don't see you can't get homeowners to keep their lawns neat. you're not going to get homeowners to follow fire, any recommendations. And does the additional cost come to us for these items, the current homeowners? Or will Rush Valley be the only safe neighborhood in the area? Anyway, I really hope that you consider this. It's not safe. And I don't believe that the additional traffic it just isn't worth it. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the chambers who wishes to testify? Yep, come on up.
Hello, I'm Philip Grimsrud, 6761 East Black Gold Street. I'm in the Sunny Ridge subdivision up against Rush Valley. And I think, to me, looking at the maps, especially with the Micron development, it looks to me like really the best option for a secondary road is to cut straight across on the south end of that Rush Valley, because you're only looking at about a mile parallel to the Columbia Road that's already there. And in some ways, this is almost more of a question to the applicant, because the original proposal had a secondary access road that was emergency only, going like up to Highway 21. And I don't think the prospects for approval were very high, but I don't know. My question is, have they pursued coming straight across to the new Micron stuff on that south side? And that's really kind of what I'm wondering, from just trying to get that secondary access perspective. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else in the house? All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and move to the folks who are online. First up, looks like we could go with Matthew Sabin.
That's correct.
Great. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. I'm Matthew Sabin. I live at 8133 South Red Cliff Avenue, Boise, 83716. I'm in the Painted Ridge subdivision. I should indicate that I'm also speaking as the board president for the HOA of Painted Ridge. The other speakers have actually already spoken most of my points, so I will not waste time repeating them. I have written to you in the past indicating my belief that secondary access is secondary access. If they promised it, they should deliver it. Then lastly, I'd like to say that I appreciate their plan to make their development safer from fire. But I ask if we really believe individual homeowners or their tenants are going to remember to shelter in place when a fire comes over the hillside. I love the idea that they're pushing better fire preparedness. I would like, as a HOA, to participate in making ours also safer. But again, I don't think that's going to keep my residents from deciding to leave. And right now, ACHD is demonstrating that chip sealing can close us into our environment for 20 or 30 extra minutes, which is enough time for a fire to do some serious damage. Never mind fire. We have all kinds of reasons why there's an access problem to our developments. Fire is a very important one, and I appreciate all the attention, but frankly, lots of reasons residents might suddenly want to use the road and then can't because it's full. So in closing, I would encourage you to vote to deny this modification and allow time for Micron or ACHD to put in secondary access if the applicant can't find their own. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sabin. Okay, next up, is it Ian Sandercock? Yep. Go ahead and name and
Yes,
address
it is.
for the record.
Ian Sandercock, and I live at 8050 South Gold Bluff. I'm also speaking as a member of our HOA board as well. Since I've lived here in the 3 years, we've had 3 fires, one which did shut down Columbia. That did actually come from the north and crossed over Columbia and shut that down for quite a few hours. Off the top of my head, I don't know. The proposal, I think, to mitigate fire and wildland fire safety, I think is admirable. I do think that it should be a requirement for any and all subdivisions, even the ones that are current. It should have been put in place long before now. Somebody mentioned the 2008 fires that burned down Oregon Trail Heights. I actually lived right behind that. And if you want to talk about a fire break, that's a 60-foot cliff that the fire went right up and burned down. I can't remember how many houses. So there are a lot of things with fire that you just can't plan for. And I do agree with that. I also agree, shelter in place is your last resort. But the problem with that is that if you're sheltering in place and you have no way out, if there is an emergency, something that a normal homeowner can't take care of, medications, heart attacks, things like that, the chance of someone surviving things like that, or smoke inhalation is another one. Things like that cause a large safety to a large amount of people. And we were talking 1,000 homes. That could be 3,000 people if you want to put an average of 3 people per home. So I really think that the commission, please highly take this under consideration and all the stuff you've heard from homeowners today and deny this this request. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right. Anybody else online who wishes to testify on this item? Okay. Oh, Amanda Rickson, you're up.
Okay. It's Amanda Rickson, and the address is 5730 East Bendridge Street, Boise 83716. I'm part of the Painted Ridge neighborhood, and listening to part of the fire safety about how, in worst case scenario, a fire pole would break, fire would start. We had just, last summer, someone ran into a fire pole, broke it in half, and Columbia was closed. Nobody could get through, even with how supposedly wide Columbia is. So, there is not another route. And I don't believe that we should put 400 more houses behind ours if there isn't another route. So I vote to deny this.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rickson. Anybody else online who wishes to testify on this item? Looks like none. Is there one last call? Anybody in the chambers who wish to testify? Okay. At this point, we'll call the public testimony to a close and we'll bring up rebuttal. So, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise. So had an opportunity to listen to the neighbors and appreciate everybody's comments. I think everybody's coming at this, with good intent. I think the question that the commission needs to think about and that we've been thinking about is that if it's not safe now, when there's 400 approved lots, what's the right answer? We would be glad to work with the other HOAs. We'd be glad to, allow them to participate in any of those programs. Everything that we've talked about today is going to be at our HOA's cost. We're not asking the other HOAs to contribute. And we can make sure that all of that is enforceable through CC&Rs that have limited amendment rights and are enforced through, professional property managers. So I have no concerns about all of that. But if it's not safe, then we need to look at what can be done. And right now, secondary access is not something that can be done. So we need to, from our perspective, we think that the best outcome is to complete that buffer, to try to provide shelter in place areas that don't currently exist, that the single access is already an issue. And so, with that, I'd ask the commission to look at this from that perspective. Like, if it's not safe now, what's the best solution and what is the best of the available options? And then approach it from that perspective. I would also mention one other thing that, the fire department submitted a letter. It's a fairly technical letter. It says that it doesn't recommend approval of the changes. And the reason it said that was because it doesn't comply with the 70 unit limitation that was applied by the city council. and it doesn't comply with the 60 unit limitation that was subsequently added. I want to just kind of clarify something there, and I think it points to one of the items that's really important in all of this is that what fire is saying is that they're not going to contradict council. Council came up with a requirement that was above the requirements of code. They were unwilling to contradict that with a recommendation. I understand where that's coming from. But I think what we have to look at here and the question we're asking you to decide and then ultimately for city council to look at is that same one I mentioned. If it's truly not safe now, and a lot of these folks have been here for years in that unsafe condition, if it's not safe now, then what do we do? And we think that this is the best approach to go ahead and complete that buffer and provide some changes. Whereas if this doesn't go forward, then that won't be there. So with that, I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. With that, I think we will close the hearing and the item is before the commission for a decision. This is item number 6, CAR 23-6, located at 6559 East Zafra Ridge. Real quick, Delaney, would you mind pulling up in your presentation, you gave 4 options. Would you pull that up for us just for reference? Thank you. Motion for discussion is always on the table too. Just saying.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I'll try a motion for discussion. I move that we recommend approval of a DA modification to eliminate the time frame required to obtain and install the secondary access road.
Okay, we have a motion to modify the existing DA to remove the time restriction as originally planned, originally part of the DA. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stead. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I think the fire code, the 2018 International Fire Code has been amended by the city of Boise to add that additional requirement for 2 access roads when you're over 60 units, regardless of whether you're sprinkled. That's pretty straightforward. I mean, that is code and it's an amendment to the fire code. In my mind, that's not something that I'm comfortable deviating from, specifically because the fire marshal as well is recommending adhering to that. However, there's applications from Micron, there's, ACHD is starting to show some of those connections. I think there's potential that maybe that second access could be coming at some point in the future, and having that ability to kind of move forward once that access becomes available seems reasonable to me. However, removing the requirement for that access specifically because it is part of code is not something that I'm comfortable doing based on our recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Squires.
I fully agree with Commissioner Moore and will be supporting the motion. They ask the question, if it's not safe now, what do we do? Well, you implement the proposed plan for the existing homes. That's what you do. And you don't build more until there's a secondary access that you promised. It's maddening to be up here and having this conversation. But the developer needs to fulfill his promise. He needs to meet code. And I don't feel comfortable bypassing the fire chief. Not one bit. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just real quick, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm supportive of the motion as well. Eventually, I think what's going to happen is time is just going to run out, and the private sector is going to say, we're not going to insure these homeowners anymore up there, and you guys are going to be dead in the water. I don't know how they're getting insured now with this being the case. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the approval. I hope you guys can get that done. I mean, obviously there's a big investment up there. We want people to be safe, but yeah, and I'm definitely willing to have you guys, get time to get that thing done. And implementing the Firewise plan is that's going to become a reality all over the city as it expands. And so that's, I commend the work on this. And I think you should probably just out of course implement what you proposed.
Okay. I'll chime in real quick here. So, man, this is one I personally regret because I was on the commission when this was approved in 2016, and it's one I wish I could vote on it again. I don't think this development should have ever been approved, frankly, but it was, and I regret that. But here we are. So I actually am going to be in supportive of the motion, but I do want to say I commend the applicant here because I do believe what the applicant is trying to do is not only take proactive steps to ensure the safety of the future residents and the future dwellings, but I do think those steps would go towards the safety of the existing residents. However, nothing gets to the ingress egress aspect of it. And that's the fatal flaw to me. I don't know what the motivation for Simplot is to hold some of their properties there. I have no idea. And I know it's a rock and a hard spot for the applicant trying to get a road through there. I do have one concern, and that is if in fact that we are successful in this road going through, I wonder then what becomes of all of these steps that are being proposed now. Will they go away? That cost of the road is not insignificant. I understand that. So I do have concerns that this may end up being an either or type of a situation. That's going to be one to keep our eye on moving forward. But in any case, I think that road is paramount. I think it absolutely is paramount, adding several hundred more rooftops of what was discussed with the public of folks who can't always be controlled, right? And take actions. They have something on the grill that goes on fire, and it's like, well, we can't police everything. So anyway, for those reasons, I'll be supportive of the motion. Any other comments, any questions? Not questions, comments. Okay, will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ganley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, we do have one more item, and this will be interesting. Item number 8, CAR 22-48 BVA. This is the application. It's located at 6310 South Orchard Street and 5110 Lake Hazel Road. It is an annexation request, a comprehensive plan amendment, development applications, or development agreements rather, and a preliminary plat. So with that, staff, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Just to orient you, this entire project site is consisting of 161 acres total, with approximately 40 acres to be annexed located at the intersection of Orchard Street and Pleasant Valley Road. The 40 acres is surrounded on all sides by properties within the city limits. The area highlighted in blue on your screen to the south and east is part of the project as well. It's existing 121 acres that was previously annexed by the applicant. The applicant proposes an amendment to the comprehensive plan future land use map to convert approximately 26 acres from an industrial land use to a commercial land use designation. The request to amend the land use is to allow for a commercial C2 zone that would support development of a more intense and concentrated use to serve both the adjacent industrial park and the surrounding area. The applicant is proposing to rezone the existing C1 DA portion of the property in the southwest corner from a neighborhood commercial to M1 DDA, which would be a light industrial, and situate all commercial development within the 26 acres located in the northwest corner of the intersection at the future Pleasant Valley Road and South Orchard Street. The CPA is necessary to facilitate the ultimate zoning and rezoning of the project site and to have a consolidated C2 area with an appropriate proximity to the existing Syringa Valley conceptual master plan. This area is located on the west side of Orchard Street, and the applicant identifies a need to provide a transition from those residential, institutional, and commercial uses within the Syringa Valley plan to a more intensive industrial planned area on the opposite side of Orchard. The proposed commercial designation east of Orchard would mirror the anticipated commercial uses within Syringa Valley. And this would provide a commercial and retail service in close proximity to both residential and employment centers. The overall intent of the project is to operate as a significant industrial park, consistent with what the comprehensive plan envisioned. However, the applicant did recognize a need to provide commercial uses and services to serve the large industrial employment center. Commercial services provided here would be consolidated and be at a more appropriate location than what was originally proposed south of Lake Hazel Road. So with this application, the applicant will be modifying the existing development agreement to add the new annexation area and to update the proposed zoning designations as seen on your screen. The intent is to simplify future planning and development processes on the entire site by having a single development agreement in place. Comments were received from agencies. The Department of Finance and Admin did request more time to do analysis on the projected tax revenue versus cost of services, and ACHD requested more time to review a modified TIS. So this item will not be scheduled for City Council until those reviews have been completed. And Fire has tentatively approved a proposed future fire station location. And so with that, that would comply with the existing DA. Planning team recommends approval, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move forward to the applicant. And I think that the applicant is online. Oh, okay. Do you have somebody on your team online? Got it. Okay, please come on up. Sorry. You could state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, thank you. Tom Peterson with BVA Development, 1144 South Silverstone Way, Suite 500 in Meridian 83642. With me also, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, are Rob Sunderledge and Haley Hart. They are BVA engineers. And to the extent that questions become detailed technically, I thought I'd bring them for completeness, and perhaps they could add to this discussion if it'd be okay with you, if that becomes necessary. I will be brief. I want to thank Delaney and her colleagues, really all staff, for working with us. It's because of their efforts and direction and guidance that we're here with our amended application. And so we're very appreciative of their help and direction. To provide just very quickly some context, and not to regurgitate anything, but shown in the screen, as was indicated, the larger L shape, which I guess it's reverse L, is the 121 acres that was previously annexed and rezoned as part of an application in 2021. And a development agreement was recorded in September of 2021 with respect to that approval. So that has already been annexed in. The application today is in regard to that 40-acre square piece that is located at the northeast corner of Lake Hazel and South Orchard Street. It's important to also note that separate from these two parcels that are shown, BVA also owns an additional 40-acre parcel to the northeast that is presently annexed M1 and is not subject to this application or to the existing development agreement. And I mentioned that, and I think it's for overall context now, that in total, if what we're proposing is recommended for approval by this commission and ultimately approved by the city council, we will own 200 acres, approximately 174 of which will be M1 industrial, with 26 acres for C2. In other words, this is an industrial site. As the master developer of the site and in conjunction with our partner Adler Construction, we are treating this as an industrial site and planning accordingly. I'll discuss here briefly in just a moment, but we do feel the need for ancillary commercial that can serve the residential to the west, the industrial to the east, and serve as an appropriate buffer and transition between those two areas. Importantly, we feel that the comprehensive plan, the goals stated therein, will be met by consolidating and really swapping out commercial. In other words, the net total of the commercial that we're proposing isn't increasing by the 40 acres that we were originally contemplating as submitting to be commercial. We're doing a type of a swap. And so maybe that's what I'll, before I go to that, and that's a great slide to have up, but the question probably will be asked as pertaining to this 40 acres in the present application, why this was not included in the original application for annexation and rezone that we did in 2021 and which is now reflected by the development agreement. That was because of then existing litigation that was regarding a compost facility on that 40 acres. And it was operated by a tenant on that parcel. And because of that litigation, we could not include that in original application. And so during the hearing on annexation for the original 121, the reverse L, this members of the Boise City Council requested confirmation that the 40 acres now before you that we're addressing wasn't going to be left unincorporated forever. In other words, they expressed concern that was just going to be a donut. And we assured them then that we would be back once the litigation had resolved itself and concluded, and that's why we're here now. In other words, out of necessity, due to the then pending litigation, this really had to become a two-step process where we completed the first step of annexation and rezone, and now we're back with a proposal for this remaining 40 acres. So if we could go to the next slide, and briefly, what's depicted in the green on the screen and what you have in the materials that were submitted to you is that 120 acres that was part of the 2021 annexation. Included in that is the red portion. At that time, that was approved as part of the application to be zoned C1. To the north is the 40 acres. You can see the white line delineating that 40 acres. What we have proposed, again, in cooperation and listening to the concerns shared by staff, is to swap so that the red, which was C1, now becomes industrial. The 40 acres shrinks in commercial size so that there's more M1 overall area there, and we consolidate the proposed C2 at that major intersection of Orchard and Innovator. So it's a swap, it's a consolidation, and it's an enlargement of the M1 area. This relocates the commercially zoned property away from the intersection of Lake Hazel and Orchard. And as stated, our primary goal has always been for this to be a significant industrial park consistent with the comprehensive plan. As part of that, we recognize the need for some servicing of the industrial areas and their employees, as well as a buffer and transition from residential. I just very briefly, and I know my time is short, so I will not go over, but as was submitted as part of our application, we have considered, I believe very thoughtfully, the relevant standards for an amendment to a comprehensive plan. And those are set forth in Boise City Code section 11-3-4.16b7. And just a review of those just on the record here is that the first of those criteria and factors is that the proposed amendment is in furtherance of public convenience, necessity, or the general welfare of the community. And it's clear that there have been significant development in this area, that this will be a major corridor. It will be a major transition between residential and industrial, and providing those services for the industrial will be an important component. We're the master developer for the whole 200 acres. And so this isn't going to be a drop and run. This is going to be an integration with the overall site. Another factor is that the proposed amendment addressed changes in community conditions that have occurred since the adoption of the comprehensive plan. Of course, with the implementation of the Lake Hazel and Gowan realignment, that study results in the extension of Lake Hazel across the New York Canal, its connection to Orchard Street. It becomes a major connection between the interstate and areas southwest of the airport. So retail users such as a grocery store or maybe a home improvement and building material store or discount department store in the area that's immediately next to the airport planning area could be a very good buffer and service to that surrounding area. And then finally, as it sets forth in the code itself, that the proposed amendment will not place undue burden on transportation or adversely affect the delivery of services. We came in with the first annexation application with the traffic study. As indicated, the traffic study has been modified. We had completed one, but because of the proposed swap, for lack of a better term, that needs to be modified, and that's in the process. We've submitted that scoping memo to ACHD and are working closely with Ms. Wallace and her staff to complete the traffic study here. I'd also note that we worked and part of the development agreement to identify the location for a fire station. And that has been worked through and identified, it included, and it will be in our subdivision. And in talking with Romeo and the fire department to make sure that they have access. So once that TIS concludes and determines exactly where the access points will be, we already have agreement with the fire station to provide them services. So finally, as we go to the final slides, I'd like to set forth that, again, minimizing, consolidating the commercial. This, of course, is a conceptual site plan, but what we have is the pedestrian pathway. And if we can go quickly to the next slide, it also shows the master plan and the movement. It was shared with us that there really needs to be thoughtful consideration for connectivity and pedestrian experience for this overall site. Obviously, when we come in for design review, should this proposal be recommended for approval and ultimately approved, we'll work to really get into the granular detail of this. But this shows an overall site how, and go back one if you could please, that this will be the commercial. The rest can be the consolidated and frankly, better placed industrial. And so again, I can't thank staff enough for kind of helping us navigate what we think is a more solid proposal. And with that, we've submitted this amended application and would certainly stand for questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Peterson. Would next move forward to anybody from the neighborhood association, and that person would be SD LaFrance, and I don't see her here nor online. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and turn our attention to the commission for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard.
I do have a series of questions for the applicant. Can we get the slides back up again too? I guess while we're waiting for that, Mr. Peterson, what is the time frame for all this? What is your guys' projected time frame to start turning dirt and whatnot?
Yeah, sorry, with my glasses, I literally can't see you at all. And without them, I can't see a thing on my page. So you're witnessing the age right in front of your eyes. So Commissioner Blanchard and Mr. Chair, the timing on this is as stated, that what's depicted as phase one, that has gone through for Project Dove. It's hard to say whether that would actually go first or in conjunction with phase two, that would go first. But overall, we would need to go through the platting process. And so in best case scenario, we would love to see some dirt being moved on either phase two or phase one about this time next year. That might be ambitious, but that's the overall target.
Can we go back one slide on that, Delaney? If I can just continue really quick. No, I'm sorry. I think it was the first slide in the presentation. No, it was the one that showed the overall map of the plan, the site plan. There was one that was a detailed version of that.
Might be on their screen.
I believe it's on ours.
Oh, yeah, it was your presentation. I'm sorry, Lenny.
I need to re-promote, just one.
I got you jammed up. That's my fault. Well, so I guess, I mean, I'll just put my cards on the table. Here we go. Is that I'm totally comfortable with this, with the annexation. And I guess if we're not going to even start moving dirt until next year, I mean, why not wait and get better zoning, frankly? I mean, when I look at that can we get your presentation back up again? I mean, here's what I like the idea of the commercial that's out there, but what we're really trying to do with the new zoning code that's coming up is get out of this mindset of commercial is here, residential is here, and industrial is here. It's like we're trying to talk about mixed use. That's why everything's going to MX, right? And when I look at, do we have the main slide?
I think maybe the cover sheet is.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yep, you were on it. Okay. Nope. There we go. Right there. Stop pushing button. No. Okay. So again, like when I look at this, it's like, this is not a business. This looks like a business park that we're remodeling, that we're renovating all over the country now because it's obsolete. That's what it looks like to me. When you talk about the connectivity and whatnot, the connectivity areas, if everybody can see this, I don't know what they can see, are the areas for pedestrians here are labeled in number 7. And so there's one there on Orchard Street, and I don't know what a pedestrian would be doing out there. And there's one over here. And if this is a business park, I'm thinking like, you need gathering areas. It's just like, this just looks like a 1950s business park. And so I'm surprised that Director Keene would have said, oh yeah, this is like exactly what we're trying to go for in our new development code. I mean, I guess if I could sum the whole thing up, it's like, there's still like this, when I see this, there's still this mindset of we're going to put trees in a parking lot versus parking in a forest. And what I want if in a subdivision application is I want to see parking in a forest, right? Not we put trees in the parking lot because that's what the code said. So it doesn't look innovative, and it's called the Innovator Business Park subdivision. I really like to see something that was more mixed use before I went, let's sign off on this subdivision.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, thank you for those comments. I can address it in threefold. First, I think it's important to note that this is a conceptual site plan, and of course, we would stick to this configuration and hopefully materiality. I would expect that as we get into design reviews, we get into those types of things that are beyond the comp plan and annexation stage, that this would be exactly as you described. The last thing that BVA wants to do, and that we have yet to ever do, is to build a 1950s park of any kind. I think that we've demonstrated in the city and elsewhere that we're at the cusp of innovation, and that we are going to bring a quality product and a comprehensive plan to the overall site. So I hear you loud and clear. I think it was Director Keene who did, suggest the consolidation that it could, and as part of those discussions, and answer to your question, why not wait? That as we looked at those codes and we looked at the potential proposed changes that are underway right now as we speak, that if this were going to be a paradigm shift, if this were going to be something that was so outlandishly different, I totally agree. It would make all the sense in the world to pause and to wait to see exactly what the landscape is we might be dealing with. Here, however, as we line by line went by the code and with the help of Director Keene and staff to see, what the materiality is functionally the equivalent. And so let's proceed as is. The third and final point, and I think this answers your question, or at least goes to it in part. And if not, then correct me. But to come in with, a C2, and again, it's conceptual at this stage. It's very conceptual. But one way to do it, and it's aggravating sometimes to see this happen throughout the valley, that it's a piecemeal C1 approach that retroactively you look and say, gosh, that should have been a C2. We want to be above board. We want to work with the feedback that we got. And it was at the request that we consider C2, that's why we put it in the way that it was, so that there could be the potential for a prospective big box of some type because C1, of course, doesn't allow it, anything over that 60,000 threshold. So it provides us that potential to really provide some synergies in that area. But all that said, I obviously am on the record whether I want to be or not, but we will not be building anything that appears like a 1950 business park. That would torpedo our entire business plan.
Just a quick follow on then. I mean, well, I'm going to challenge you a bit on that, because when I look out at 10 Mile and I-84, it's like, that looks like the greatest missed opportunity on the planet to me. It's just a big park. You have to drive into work to your building there now. There's nowhere for anybody to go. There's no green space. There's no bodega. There's no anything. You've got to drive in and out of everywhere. And that's the way most of the BVA developments are. And that's why I'm concerned that it's like that we're not getting through with what we're looking for as far as future. It's like, I don't really care about C2. I want to see the MX3, or you could even go deep. This is the time to get this right in the Southwest, where we got bare dirt out there and we're going to build an entirely new city. I mean, we're talking about thousands of people could be interacting in this space. And we need to be thinking more like, the Village. We need to be thinking more like, we need to be not thinking like this.
Are there specific questions that you wanted to get out?
No, again, I'm just trying to get where I'm at is, I'm happy to do the annexation, but I'm not at all crazy about this as it stands right now.
May I respond? I don't know if there was a question, but I'd like to respond if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would note for the record that 10 Mile Crossing is not completed yet. It's still under construction. Top Golf is out there. We have the retail coming in. I think that what this valley will find is that when 10 Mile Crossing is complete, it will be in every way a rival to the Village. It will be in every way the type of gathering place that it was intended to be. Here, of course, we're not dealing with 10 Mile Crossing. We're dealing with the Pleasant Valley Business Park. And again, what you have shown before you is we're at the comp plan stage. We're at annexation. This is very conceptual. But what we're trying to depict and describe is a buffer and planning 101 transition from residential to industrial. I don't know, like right now there's burrowing owls there, and it may be we have the Village out there. But right now I think we're so close to saying the same thing, that what we're trying to create is something of a synergistic area that is 200 acres industrial and residential. And so we're trying to provide that buffer.
Ms. Pearson, on that line, I'm going to follow up with some of Commissioner Blanchard's comments here. I know this is conceptual, but do you have conceptually an idea of how many parking stalls are on this?
Yeah, I'm going to, if it's appropriate, for these types of more detailed questions,
Sure,
I would
that's your
invite
team,
Rob
that's fine.
Sunderledge,
They-
our chief engineer, to
That's fine.
describe. And
Yep.
and I'm putting Rob on the spot, and he might say, I don't know. So then it can be, Rob's
Way to go, Bob.
non-answer. Yeah.
For the record, can you at least give us your name and address though?
Yeah, Rob Sunderledge, 1144 South Silverstone, the BB office. And I will say, I don't know, from the standpoint of the number of parking stalls, but what we typically like to do when we look at any type of office, or we have a typical parking standard that it sometimes exceeds and sometimes matches depending on the jurisdiction. But with Boise, we tend to comply with that parking standard. For the retail, and I guess I would point out the development itself is largely retail. It's going to be implementing retail space, restaurants, shopping, not so much office, where it's kind of a destination for the office. This is largely, like Ton has expressed, it's an industrial area. So the parking will be accommodated to facilitate the retail use, restaurants, around that 7 to 8 stalls per 1,000 square feet of parking, but we don't have an exact number. And again, just to express, this is very conceptual to get lots configured, and we will be going through the DR application on each of these individual sites, which will bring a lot more of a dynamic site with plazas and how these different users will occupy the space. But sorry, it's a long-winded answer to the question as far as parking. It would be the typical retail type parking for restaurants and commercial uses.
Great. Can you pull up the master plan that showed the pathways around the perimeter and internal of the site, please? Thank you. My question is, I don't understand. I do get that it does, the language it says minimum. So there's a ... there. And there's another one that says 7 to 10 feet. But what I'm wanting to understand is, why is there a 7-foot pathway around the perimeter along the arterials and upwards of a 10-foot pathway on the internal of the site?
Probably the reason for any type of connectivity that we like to implement on the BVA developments, typically we have a ring path that allows people to get out and do a walk around the site, through the site, and creating a space that's a path that's 10 to 12 feet. It facilitates more of a user experience rather than just walking down a sidewalk. Meeting the standards for sidewalks along the arterials, the extra width rather than a 4 or 5 foot sidewalk. It provides that additional buffer, but it largely is walking along an arterial, whereas we would like to draw people into the site and through the site, interconnecting the industrial use and the commercial use with the larger pathways and make that part of the user experience. We implement a lot of the landscape buffers, the trees along those pathways. And so it really is to facilitate people getting out into the development, walking to and from each of the uses.
Let me rephrase that, because I'm going to ask the staff, I think, this question. We just had a work session where we talked about side paths, ACHD implementing side paths upwards of 10 to 12 feet along arterials. Conceptually, we're tracking. What I'm not clear on, and I don't understand, is the dimensions, because to me, the dimensions are off. If we're going to have arterial pathways, which is great, they need to be 10, even 12 feet wide on the arterials that allow bicycling for not just your tenants, but obviously the residents that have been mentioned here. So that's where I'm not sure is, why is there wider pathways internal and narrower along the busier roads?
So we have represented what's been typical with ACHD, but I know that they have been, in conjunction with the jurisdictions, implementing larger pathways if that's something that's desired. Ton has mentioned we're still going through that traffic impact study, and we're waiting for conditions of approval, but we would absolutely look at implementation of what types of pathways would be more preferable along the arterials. But right now, it's just set as the standard cross section.
Fair enough. Any other questions of the commission? Good. Okay. With that, then let's go ahead and open it up to public testimony. I don't have a sign up sheet. Is there anybody? There's 4 of you. Anybody over here? And I don't have anybody online. So unless security wants to chime in on this, I think we're good. So no public testimony. That would conclude public testimonies phase. Rebuttal, there's nothing for you to rebut unless you really want. You're entitled to time to anything else you want to add before we conclude the hearing and make a decision.
Actually, only to state, it meant no disrespect to this commission or this process that I wasn't here at the beginning to start. And I'm sorry for that, but it should not be interpreted as being dismissive of the importance of being here when it started at 6 p.m. So that's all I wanted to put for the record. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, the public hearing is concluded. We have 3 items before us. CAR 22-48, which is the annexation request. CPA 22-3, which is the comprehensive plan map amendment. And then sub 2301, which is the preliminary plat portion of the application. So 3 different items in front of us. So with that, turn it over to the commission for a decision, a recommendation.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Squires.
I recommend we approve CAR 22-48, CPA 22-03, and SUB 23-01 with all to the City Council for approval with all the terms and conditions therein.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Squires for approval of all 3 items making up number 8 on our agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stead for the second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Squires.
Not much to add other than, we obviously need industrial uses, industrial space within our city. BVA has been great in providing that in the past and currently and in the future as well too. I think this meets everything that we're looking for, within the city of Boise, and would just recommend my fellow commissioners vote nay or vote yay on this. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry,
Any other,
I'm low blood
no
sugar right
problem. Any
now.
other discussion? I've been flawless tonight on the
I'm
other hand, so.
I'm so hungry. So sorry.
Not a power bar, you want a power. Any other discussion on the item? Okay, I'm gonna be brief because I feel compelled to speak up on this one. I'm totally in support of the annexation and I'm completely in support of the comp plan. I think that we need industrial space. I know we are woefully inadequate in terms of this valley and that. The problem I have is I agree with Commissioner Blanchard. I think that this preliminary plat, frankly, is so far off that I have a hard time even moving forward with it, even knowing that it's still got a long way to be massaged. When I look at that, I see nothing but drive-throughs. That's what I see. I see single-story drive-throughs and surface parking lot that just is massive. And those go against what we're trying to do. Even if it's, and frankly too, this is greenfield development, right? This is our chance to get it right. This isn't a redevelopment. And I'm thinking about industrial buffer areas. Like in Twin Falls, they have their entire warehouse district, for example, which is I think a great, there's other places around the state where you can show where we have industrial uses and retail that work really well together and create a vibe. I mean, you're seeing some of that, frankly, even in Garden City, right? And so to me, I can't in good faith, good conscience support that sub the way that it is, because I do think it's just so far from where we want to be. But the motion was made for all three. So that puts me in a bit of a bind. But for that reason, I think ultimately I'm going to end up having to vote no, simply because they're tethered together. So any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, would the clerk call the vote?
Stead.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
No.
Moore.
Aye.
Danley.
No.
3 in favor, 2 opposed, motion carries.
Okay, with that, this concludes our hearing. Thank you for coming out.